And then I think we're ready to go whenever you're ready. So do you just want to start?
I'm scared to start.
Okay,
I've got stage fright.
That's going to be the start then. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Somehow You Did to Work. Nope. Okay.
I'm suddenly very self-conscious about this. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Somehow You Didn't Die on Your Way to Work. I popped an anti-anxiety and got over it. This is a transit industry safety podcast hosted by Zach Lybrand and Joe Zeta.
Yeah, hi. How you doing? Okay, we're off to a fantastic start.
Fantastic start. We are professionals.
Sure. Anyways, okay, we're gonna go on to the next slide now because we don't really have. Sure. Let's see. Oh yes, the news.
Let's get into the fucking news.
Let's get into the news. Starting off, safety's woke now. Zach, you're going to have much more experience with the Railroad Safety Advisory Committee than I ever could have. But
I actually don't, because I didn't even know this was a thing. I wanted to get upset by that quote that said, many have not held a single meeting in over a year, while others have not produced recommendations or advisory reports. And I was like, surely that's not true. The FRA gives us information all the time about safety improvements and best practices. But no, the Railroad Safety Advisory Committee has not had a meeting in damn near a year. And I could not tell you what the hell they do. I was looking at the minutes from previous meetings and agendas and trying to figure it out. And basically it's a lot of, well, maybe we ought to do something about that. Next meeting? Yeah, next meeting.
One of these things
that seems to be it.
One of these things where the worst person you know happens upon a relatively understandable point, but then is like, and it's the radical DEI and climate agenda. It's like, no.
It's like, yes, maybe the committees need to be rethought, but no, it's not because of woke. It's not woke. I promise you, safety is not woke.
It's not woke. The railways really aren't woke. Do you think that because we've painted a rainbow on a train once in a while, that we're going to get past the fact that a lot of yard units are still in master slave configuration? Like no one's there yet. No one's there yet.
No. Until I see documentation that has that written out, no. We aren't automatically a bunch of lefty pinko commies because there's a rainbow train.
When the train...
Actually, a couple, which is pretty cool, but beside the point.
When the train can self-identify as A, a person, someone with a gender, and B, that it's attracted to someone of the same gender, then we can talk, okay?
When my rule book can do that, then we'll talk about how safety is woke. Until then, I'm going to shove it in my bag and try to pretend it doesn't exist every now and then.
Just like the Republican Party is doing with the gays. Anyways, on to the next slide.
Woo! Spicy.
This one you told
Howdy,
me to put
y'all. Howdy, y'all. We're here to fuck up your day. Railroads don't give a shit about blocking your crossings. If it's going to make them money, like have a train staged up closer to a yard and ready to go in, they don't care if, Graham dies of a heart attack because the ambulance can't get through, because there's a train on the only crossing that leads in and out of your neighborhood. And Texas is apparently the best at it, or at the very least, Houston is the very best at it. I cannot remember what the actual number was, but Houston has a lot of crossings that can be blocked, especially considering how close a lot of these rail yards are to downtown.
Hundreds of times this year is, I feel like, enough. This is why if you live in a small town where trains frequently do stop, your city will have spent a considerable amount of money on an overpass at some point in the recent 20-ish years, because everybody was having this shit happen to them. And the only other thing to do is to have underpasses, which were all built in 1900 racism when steam trains ruled the earth, and those are all rusting away and spalling out of
Yep.
concrete and everything. So there's really, it's really just, it'll, in the plus side, in about 35, 40 years, this will just happen again when all those bridges wear out.
Yeah. And there's no legislation preventing this.
There's
like even the General Code of Operating Rules says that during operations, crossings must not be blocked for more than 10 minutes when practical. And when practical is incredibly subjective and very loosely interpreted.
Yeah, they could fine them $20. That would do something.
You want to tell the cop that tries to get up on the motor to give me a ticket where he should send it? Because I don't know either, and I'm not taking it. I'm not even signing for it. I'm not even opening the door for him. Forget that. I'll call another cop to get him off the train.
Put a parking boot on the locomotive. This causes a different problem.
I feel like I could probably roll through that. I could probably roll through that better than an SUV could.
Well, no, you've booted the locomotive, thus meaning you can't free the crossing up.
Oh, no, now I want that to happen. Oh, I'm going to egg somebody on to do that. I don't really get a lot of opportunities to sit on crossings just because we try to be pretty mindful of that. And most of the dispatchers I work with will tell us if we're going to be sitting on a crossing for a while or not, so we know whether or not to hold back or if they need us to scoot up for a few minutes to get another train by and then we're continuing on. But I guess down in Houston, they just don't give a fuck.
Well, maybe this is still the knock-on delays from when UP bought SP. Like, it's actually just 30 years later still happening.
I legitimately would not be shocked by that.
Somewhere out there, there's one covered hopper that rolled off the production line, picked up a load of plastic pellets, and has got into Houston the day of the first real traffic jam started, and actually hasn't left. It's just been going from local to local as a ghost in the car in the car sorting system.
Can you imagine the smell of the off gas of plastic pellets 30 years later?
It's never left. It's like the ghost train, but it's just one car. No one. The product has been insuranced out.
No two jobs hand.
The product has been insured out like 30 years ago. The car doesn't exist anymore. In 10 years' time, someone's going to call... when it finally reaches the age of the interchange limit, it's going to get someone at Procore or what's another big one? Another big rail car leasing firm, like Wells Fargo.
UTLX maybe? United?
UTLX, Wells Fargo, something like that. They're going to get a phone call and they're going to go, "We haven't had that car since 1999. And then the lawyers have...
Wait a minute, what's that car number? I'm not showing it anywhere. Let me go check that filing cabinet in the basement. Maybe there's something in there about it.
This reminded me of a story. I must have read Trains or Classic Trains, of a company that had at some point got a tanker car that was just left in its yard. They shoved it inside the building to use it as a storage tank, and then or an off-run tank of some kind, and then they went out of business. And so that tanker was in there for so long that when they called, it took them a solid calendar year to get approval to move the tanker somewhere, to empty it and then scrap it, because it didn't exist anymore.
Holy cow.
I think this may have been it was 2001 or something, and this car still had plain bearings or something. That doesn't sound right. I think it might have been newer than that, but it was just gone. It was just it didn't exist anymore.
Plain bearings wouldn't have been that far out of date in 2001.
It was some the car had been in there for 30 plus years, is what I think filled with mystery chemical.
Oh, I believe it. They I have had car tracking gets weird, and I have seen an incident where there were 2 rail cars floating around with the same number,
Oh,
and me and this one other guy kept saying like, "Hey, you have 2 cars," and we would refer to them. One is the plane car and one is the hummingbird car because it had a giant hummingbird spray painted on the side, and nobody believed us that there were 2 cars with the same number until one day I picked up one, delivered it to the UP, and it was the head car that I delivered to the UP. I then went down to the train that I was picking up, and the counterpart car was the head car that I was picking up. So I took a photo of both of those cars in view of each other and had to send that to my boss and say, this is why we're getting charged for the same car like every other day.
Demurrage law must be like one guy drinking under a desk in Peoria.
It has to be. And then we took the hummingbird car and put it in the track where cars needing to be repaired go, and it sat there for like a year waiting on approval just to change the car number.
Oh my God.
Bureaucracy is a nightmare, and that's why things move slow, and that's why we can't have good things like crossings that aren't being blocked.
Yeah. Oh, we're back on topic. Thank God. I was wondering how we were going to meander our way back to the point.
Somewhere in there, nothing moves fast on the railroad, including discussions about it.
Okay, well, let's go on to the next slide.
Just foreshadowing for the rest of this episode right there.
So this one is a little bit of a delayed news. The video in which I discovered this is about 3 months old and in Spanish, which is why I only found out about it now. But for those of you who don't know, the Corredor Interoceano in Mexico continues to do whatever the fuck they want.
Goofy as shit.
And so recently, a locomotive that local Mexican rail fans have called La Rarita. Basically, I think it's like the rarity or something in Spanish. Please do not quote me on that. They have maybe 2 of them. They may have built a second, like sort of Bride of Frankenstein style. But they appear to have cobbled together a Jeep 38, I'm thinking, based on the Spanish language YouTube comments. And the Spanish, and it is a GP38 with the cab of what looks like to be an SD70M. And then a lot of other things going on with it, all in this slick Mexican government paint scheme, because the Corredor Interoceano is run by the Mexican Navy. As a point of note, that Metrolink F59 PHI behind it is also going to the Corredor Interoceano, and the video I saw has the both of them coupled together being towed by KCSM MP15s to like on a freight train. So also
this thing looks so fucking weird. It's like they if model trains were just Lego, where instead of building out the entire train out of individual pieces, it was just components, somebody reached into the big bucket of Lego train pieces and just like dug their hands around a little bit, smashed them together, and pulled up whatever was in their hands, and it was this.
You're describing my early 2000s Lego Duplo train set, but this is so weird. I actually am at like a loss for words, because nothing they've done is wrong, but it's also not right. I also like how they now have an F59 PHI to match with their several other non-streamlined F59s they have. And again,
the guts are the same. That's all that matters, right? We don't need uniformity.
Just so that everyone is clear, the Mexican government is at the same time running HST 125s from England. on U.S.
Which are
tracks
lightweight and tiny,
and made of
absolutely
fiberglass at the
dwarfed
front.
by absolutely dwarfed by everything else. And we actually we've seen what happens with the one that hit a truck
and
just
it got
basically
two-faced.
poofed itself out of existence. Yeah, it did. Really.
It did. It got two-faced because they drove it home with half of its face gone. You know.
Oh Jesus! I thought they towed it.
No, they drove it. They drove that set back. Like, it was, I don't know if it was trailing or leading unit at that point, but they drove that set under its own power back to wherever their maintenance facility is.
Hell yeah, brother.
Other things
Let's go.
Other things I enjoy is I have seen video of this locomotive or the other one they built. The what the hell is that? Running in service with the 3 AM fleets they have and any number of the Bud SPV 2000s they have. Like, I need you to understand that their passenger car fleet currently is British Rail Mark 1s in semi-permanently coupled configuration, 3 AM fleets, an Northern Pacific Dome car, and Bud SPV 3000s. Or 2000s, or whatever the hell the number is. That have been
Who was that was on Well, There's Your Problem and talked about
Scooter.
The stuff going down there. That was Scooter?
Scooter.
I don't know how you make it through the day anytime one of these are mentioned without your eye just twitching uncontrollably. But hats off to you. If you haven't heard that episode, I highly recommend you go listen to it, because the Mexican government did so much sketchy shit to get this railroad going.
Which it could be,
or this service going, I should say.
It could be even better, because they also still have, but I haven't seen video of it, a tram train that they got from some sort of failed tourist railroad in Mexico. There's like 2 photos.
I have not seen this.
There are like 2 or 3 photos from when they first started up, and I couldn't find them now if you put a gun to my head, of people when they were doing the like test runs, of people hanging out of either the Northern Pacific Dome car or the HST, and this thing going by, and the HST dwarfs this. And then the other thing that I adore.
So little.
Oh, it is. No, it's like an Alstom Citatus or something, but like designed to run on train tracks. Like almost like a modern day interurban. But the other thing that I absolutely adore is a story that was relayed by Scooter in the Well, There's Your Problem thing, which is that his boss, because Scooter, it's not, it's publicly available in like through social media and everything, that I believe Scooter works for Rail Exco, which is one of the biggest.
It's not hard to connect the dots.
And so Scooter works for his company. Rail Exco bought the 2 Talgo units from the Amtrak Cascades that were left, because I think Amtrak scrapped 2 of them and then Washington State scrapped the other 2 or something like that. Rail Exco bought the last 2 of them, towed them to the scrapyard. Scooter got to run through them with a hammer, smashing every piece of ornate glasswork, because sure, sometimes you just gotta let the.
I still didn't understand why that happened.
I think he just wanted to, which is fine.
It's probably all going to get replaced anyway.
No, no, they weren't going to get replaced. The cars were then picked up with a excavator and put on a belt and fed into a shredder. Right?
That's right. Yeah. They were getting rid of him, so he smashed it for shiggles.
Yeah, and so, anyways, as like the last car is being put on the belt, CEO of Rail Exco gets a phone call. He steps away to take the phone call. It is the U.S. Department of State's like trade office, asking if he has any equipment that he'd be willing to sell right now, because the Mexican government is looking at putting together a passenger train service on the quick. As the last car gets like fed into
as
the
it
wood
starts
chipper,
to get chewed up.
Yeah, like that. So just think, if this phone call had been like 1 day earlier, the Corridor Interoceano would be Talgo's and HSTs running together, ... which is what the Nigerians are doing. Because Lagos Metro Red Line in Nigeria is the other buyer of the British Rail HSTs, and I have seen photos and video. I don't know if they've ever run it like this, because there's some sort of African level corruption and other things going on that have been basically preventing this thing from operating regularly. But they have coupled one of the spare HST power cars to the never used Wisconsin Talgos they bought.
I bet those lines work well together.
It's better.
That looks like a nice and cohesive line.
It's better than the GP38 they have at the other end. Because they got NRE to rebuild a set of GP38s to go out with them as well. They actually are all painted to match, so the cheat lines match, which is better than the Amtrak Avelias.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah. So also hilariously, the Nigerians ripped out all the seats in the HSTs and put in longitudinal seating along the wall, like bench seating.
I did remember seeing that.
Why? Who cares? It's one does not try to understand Africa unless you are like involved for a decade.
So the theory, or the reason that I had heard, and I promise you that I got this from somebody who made it very clear that they were not just like spouting off racist bullshit, was the reason they put longitudinal seating in those cars was so that they would have room to bring livestock on board.
I can see that.
That was like a genuine concern.
I can see that. That's not an out of the park reason for Africa. I think that, yeah, no, again, don't try to understand Africa unless you have like 10 years of experience in it at that stage. Like I can't make an informed comment on this. But
neither can I, but I trusted that person that was saying, like, no, I'm not being an asshole here. This is what I had heard.
So yeah, this is basically strange things are happening. And if you're willing to go into places that are not as developed as the United States, which isn't asking much, but it's a bit, you can see some, look, I want to go down into Mexico and see these, but I also am enough to realize that this is not exactly the place you want to go right now. This part of Mexico, at least. Like
I look like I have. I can dress well enough that I look like I have way more money than I actually do.
I look like I have
doesn't take much.
I look like I have someone who would pay a ransom for me.
Yeah,
I'll go with that. So it's not like this is not a comment on all of Mexico, just this one part. I'm definitely not bold enough at this point in my life. Maybe in the future.
If I knew somebody who was savvy about that area, like they were from there or had family there and they visited or something, I'd be willing to go down with them.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Me going out there solo, I'm barely smart enough to get around the city I live in, much less a foreign country with a language I don't speak being the primary language.
I'm not Stephen J. Brown, who just goes to places and manages to just not have anything happen ever. Have you seen his recent videos, Zach?
No, not in a while, actually.
He went down to Mexico. He saw these. He also went to Eritrea recently. Like last year.
Where's Eritrea? I know that, but I don't know it.
Africa. In the part of Africa where, like, your cell phone doesn't get any reception, even GPS.
Wait, is that the place? Is that the area? Don't they still run Steam out there?
That's why he went. Like, it was like the 244
TTs. Yep.
Where like the second language is like Italian, because it was an Italian colony. Like during
I remember that. I've heard of that. Would be pretty. Oh yeah, and they have the funky rail bus. I'm looking at it now. I forgot about this. I saw a trip report on it. I can see why he went out there.
Yeah. But like I'm not.
I'll live vicariously through him though.
Or I'm not the guy I know on Instagram, Paul, who's gone down to Chile and Argentina now.
Dude,
okay,
that guy gets some good photos though.
he does. He lives 25 minutes from me. I've been meaning to take him out for a drink. But
Paul Sprinkowski, right?
Sprinkowski, yeah. Do you know that I asked Paul when he went down there? Do you know that Paul A, doesn't speak Spanish, B, didn't hire a fixer, and C, just sort of went? Like,
I wish I could be that carefree.
I can't. I actually was like, Paul, what do you mean you didn't hire a fixer? Oh, you don't speak Spanish, Paul. You live in Lorraine. There's nothing. Like,
oh my god.
Like, oh my god. Anyways, we're getting off track for the fourth time in this many slides. So, anyways, on to the next thing. Yeah, don't live in Philadelphia. That's my recommendation. Basically, at current...
That's a lot of grayed out service.
No, the grayed out bits is what's staying. The red bits are what's not.
But that makes it so disconnected. What the fuck? There's so much of that that's... Oh, no. Well, SEPTA, Philly, I'm sorry. Y'all are about to get shit on unless you get one hell of a Hail Mary by, what, midnight tonight?
Yeah,
as
so
of recording?
we're recording this on August the 12th. Right now it's 8:02 p.m. on so
August the 14th.
I read my own phone wrong. I'm so smart. I was looking. It's August the 14th, 2025. Ignore what I just said. It's 8:02 or 8:03 p.m. at Eastern Standard Time, because Zach's in Texas, so he's Central Standard Time. If by midnight tonight the Pennsylvania legislature does not put together some form of bill to fund SEPTA in Philadelphia, SEPTA is going to enact sweeping cuts to its service, like 45% of the network in some way or the other. This is just the regional rail and like trolley service map. The bus service is going to go away. The trains themselves are going to have a 9 p.m. last call. They're going to cut, like, they're cutting service to New Jersey just entirely. There's no anything anymore as far as this is going to go, just because there's no like they can't, like, because they don't have any money, because because we want to get rid of woke. Donald Trump and his guys have stopped funding a lot of things, and as I put in the caption, the rural areas often don't like funding the urban areas, which means it's something that's dependent on a lot of state funding. Like a transit agency is getting screwed over because SEPTA is definitely having the more dramatic cuts. Among other things, they're putting their fare up to like $2.90 instead of $2.30. But Pittsburgh is suffering from a similar but not as dramatic funding crisis at the moment, because if you live in like Lancaster County or Dauphin County, you might care a bit. But if you live in like... Fuck, I lived in Lancaster County. I don't know where any of the rural hicks live. If you live out like by the West Virginia border, out by Wheeling, or if you live out by Mingo Junction, or if you live up north by like Tower City, nobody fucking cares about you to begin with. Or at least nobody cares about the rural areas to begin with. I live in a rural area. Nobody gives a shit. So they're more hostile to the big crime-ridden cities like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And so nobody gives a shit. And they're actively hostile, and then they're like, we're not going to fund this because you're woke or something. And this is there was a bill put forth in the House, or in whatever the Pennsylvania state legislature was earlier this week, that was essentially going to fund it, but it was like a poison pill sort of bill. I'm not 100% certain on the contents, but it was basically going to be like they were going to pay for current operations out of like capex or something like that. So like all future capital expenditures would basically have no money. So it failed on
So
party
basically, they're
lines.
asking, do you want to die now or later?
Yeah, it failed on party lines as one might expect. Um, the Democrats all voted against it, but the Republicans got to be like, oh look, we wanted to fund it, but the Dems don't care about you. Actually, it's all just bullshit political theater. There was no ever plan to do this because, you know, cutting off the nose despite the face is it's like that because, and this is going to be, and I mean this seriously, this is cutting off the nose despite the face because people live in Philadelphia. But the thing is that, like, if you make these are cuts that Philadelphia probably won't be able to come back from, at least not for 20 years.
Oh, I
If,
think 20 years would be generous.
well, no, assuming that like the country goes so far to the right that there's a reactionary surge of progressive blue at some point, and that basically gets like money being generated out of thin air by the Federal Reserve, we could get more funding towards transit and things like that. It'll still take 20 years to come back from these cuts, provided that it's not like a two. I think maybe if they could make it a couple of weeks before like they start losing everybody permanently, like institutional memory sort of things. At which point SEPTA's done. But what I mean, I always get off track. But when I'm sorry, let me just when I say cutting off the nose despite the face, basically, if people don't live in the city, they're going to move to someplace else. And what nobody ever seems to really fucking understand in these rural hells is that people will move to where you live. Why the fuck do you think Idaho and Nevada are the way they are right now? It's because all the Californians have moved. Except that this time they don't have to move. So, but this time they don't even have to move out of state. They can just move to where you live. Lancaster, when my parents moved there in the 90s, had fuck all. And now it's a bedroom suburb of New York City, right on the Amtrak line. I went out there for the first time in 15 years, a couple of years ago. I didn't recognize the place, and I grew up there. So it's like, where do you fucks think that people are going to go? You know, like eventually people will find Tower City, Pennsylvania, and then you're screwed. Because
nobody also seems to realize how fast this expansion happens. For instance, the Dallas Fort Worth area is rapidly expanding northward. I think eventually the Dallas Fort Worth metropolitan area will include a chunk of Oklahoma. That's only half a joke, but there was a period where when my parents moved out to the house where they are now and where I was for most of like my teenage years, it was fairly remote. There were some people around, but we were still surrounded by like a lot of ranch and farmland. I left, moved out on my own, went out of state for a while, and a couple of times I moved back. Like I flew in and parents picked me up at the airport and drove me to their house. The first time I drove back there, I started following street signs that I recognized and got so turned around and so lost and lost my every single landmark I'd ever had, it to the point where I had to call my parents at like 1 a.m. because we were running that late. And until I was like, hey, I am sitting in the parking lot of this Kroger. How the hell do I get to your house? And they had to walk me through it until I finally saw a street. It's like, okay, this is the last street before your neighborhood. I got it from here. And even then I almost missed the turn.
And stuff like that happens. And like, you know, there's a reason why people sometimes like to move out there is because the cost of living is a lot lower. And that because like, you know, going to Philly is a little expensive, you know, and going to the big city as opposed to like going to Reading or going to Altoona or something like that. And then And then, oh no, Altoona's gentrified and people have pronouns now. You played yourself.
The service cuts, I think, are ultimately another symptom of misdirected anger.
Oh, absolutely.
We're seeing this with Texas too, where we don't even really have funding for the Dallas area rapid transit from like the rest of the state. It's from the cities that are served by DART, and they gather money through a sales tax. They do to get grants from the government for capital projects and whatnot, but the day-to-day funding comes from the cities that use them. And there's a large number of people who honestly believe that the DART buses and the DART trains and even the new service that's going to be starting soon that provides even better connectivity just don't serve them. So they go, well, why would I want to bring all these bad people from the city up here on the train just to come up here and do crime in my good Christian neighborhood? We should defund them, not realizing that if they do that, there's going to be a bit of a flight because a lot of these suburbs do have major offices from them. People are going to try to move closer to those offices. And now your cute, quaint little suburb is even more crowded until you're priced right out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, how could this have happened to me? Nobody wanted to live here. Yeah, because they all wanted to live in the city. And you made it suck.
I do always like the people who argue nobody rides the trains anymore. They're too crowded. In all earnesty, or in all earnest.
Oh, God.
It's like, well, why do you think they're crowded? Why do you think they're on there? There's issues for sure that have to be addressed, but being crowded isn't the worst issue to have by far.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, there could be a thing by tonight, maybe. It seems
Hopefully.
as though it won't. So if that happens, congrats. You're fucked in one way or the other. Again, I will point to my comments here. PA urban versus PA rural. Winner, Uber. Because people will need to get around still, and you're just putting money in the pocket of, I don't even know who the fuck the CEO of Uber is right now. Travis Kalanick, maybe? No, that's not it. I don't care.
Shit, I don't know. Just look to see which one of the board members is a lobbyist for Uber, because that's what we did. And once we pointed that out, things got a lot more obvious.
It's some asshole, probably. Speaking of assholes, let's go on to the next one. Yeah, so this is late breaking news. Apparently the board at MARTA has been having a major shakeup. I don't live in Atlanta, nor do I actually care about it that much, so I haven't really been hearing about this at all. But it appears as though they had the previous CEO retired early July 17th. They had an interim CEO who they appointed now. And at the same time today, a different MARTA board member is submitting his resignation because he's running for district council, and he was supposed to have been and he's received campaign donations from a major MARTA contractor.
Oop.
So,
and that's what we call a conflict of interest.
Yeah, support your local journalism, kids, because I looked up the Xylem.com, this one. It's an Asian American news website specifically focused around Atlanta. Half of the articles were in languages I do not speak, and they clearly have some amount of oomph if they manage to get this happening. But breaking news, if you live in Atlanta and you would like this to be responded to in 1 to 2 months time, when we record the episode that you email us about, and then we talk about what your email said, we will air it. So, God, none of that sentence was coherent. Email us at sydd O Y W T
Why?
W. I said Y.
Well,
WTW,
there's a slight delay. That was my bad.
WTW@gmail.com. If you live in Atlanta and know about this, we will read it. We will put it in the next episode's news, and then that episode will come out in like 2 months. So that is responsive news media for you. But I don't have
We're
anything
pros
else.
at this.
I don't
As a
have
reminder, we are pros at this.
we record on a slight delay. We don't. If anything more juiciness comes out about this, we'll talk about it next episode. But yeah, just figured I should add this in here. Now onto the next slide. Yeah, this one is a local news story to me. So the Wheeling and Lake Erie is a major Class 2 regional railway in Ohio. And when I say in Ohio, I mean it runs through town. I get stopped by trains on my way to work sometimes. It is one of the last great independent roads that we really have. In the same way that everybody makes a fuss about the roads like the DMIR and the BLE and other things like that. If you're ever a Midwest foamer, you'll understand these references. The Wheeling Lake Erie was founded in the 90s out of the NS merger, where they sold off the Wheeling Lake Erie that had been owned by the N&W, and they sold it off to a bunch of guys from the Rio Grande who had decided to start their own railroad. The lead guy in that was Larry Parsons. He's run the railroad ever since. I guess he wants to finally retire. Fortress Investment Group, through their entity FTAI Infrastructure Inc., bought the railroad off of Larry for a cool $1.05 billion, because apparently his kids did not want to run the railway in his stead.
Surely there is somebody else there that would have stepped up to the plate.
I think that $1.05 billion makes a lot of that decision-making easy. At some point, you've got to just sort of think, that's a literal $1 billion. I don't fault
That is a $1 billion check sitting right in front of you. Yeah.
I don't fault Larry for wanting to take his bag. This is a 30-year passion project for him. We've talked about the Wheeling before. Their engines are painted like the Rio Grande does. They have former Rio Grande units still in Rio Grande paint. The engine that you see on screen on the left, 1776, is a direct homage to the N&W's Bicentennial Heritage Unit. We were just talking about Paul Springowski. Paul designed it. Paul did the foamer.
No shit.
Paul did the foamer to railroad employee pipeline in very short time. He's their social media guy on the railroad. I've actually, shortly before they officially announced this locomotive, or like the day after they officially announced it, I messaged Paul saying, "That's great. Can I see it?" He said yes. I went to Brewster Shops the next morning wearing a bright yellow shirt. And that shirt, and what I did not realize is that Brewster Shops is over 100 years old and built steam engines in there. That dirt is probably older than the Hoover administration, and it has not washed out of that shirt since. But actually, to double down on Paul, he took the image on the right, like directly, like at the railroad overpass, maybe 10 miles from my house. So, but anyways, this is actually probably a sound business thing. Unlike the NSUP thing, this is just a foamer tragedy as opposed to a business tragedy. But because the Wheeling is a fairly self-sufficient railroad, but it's just one of these things because,
Do we know anything about FTAI infrastructure?
So
Are they
FTAI owns
decent company?
FTAI owns Transtar, which is a company that owns a lot of the old U.S. steel roads, like the Union Railroad in Pittsburgh and a bunch of other ones. There's one by you in Texas. But the other thing that FTAI has owned is a bunch of other railroads. they owned um, they own Brightline right now through one of their subsidiaries.
Uh,
They also
the fuck?
they also owned through that same subsidiary before they sold it the Florida East Coast Railroad, which they sold to Grupo Mexico. They also owned
Huh.
the Central Main in Quebec, which they sold to Canadian Pacific. They also owned the Bessemer and Lake Erie, which they sold to CN. They also owned the Duluth, Mesabe, and Iron Range that they sold to CN. They also owned the Elgin, Joliet, and
Oh,
Eastern that they sold to CN. They also...
It's a pipeline to sell it back to class ones, isn't it?
Uh-huh. They've owned a bunch of different railroads and then stopped owning those railroads and sold them to someone else within a few years. And do you know what else? So the CN bought the Bessemer and Lake Erie, right? The Bessemer and Lake Erie has absolutely no connection to the rest of the mainline CN system. The Bessemer and Lake Erie has a direct connection to the Union Railroad Company in Pittsburgh. The Union Railroad Company has a direct connection to the Wheeling Lake Erie in Pittsburgh. The Wheeling Lake Erie, through trackage rights over Norfolk Southern that they have had for over 100 years, has direct interchange access with Canadian National in Toledo. In what universe is this not going to be a CN property?
Yeah. All signs point to yes.
This is going to...
As my buddy, the Magic 8 Ball, says.
I'm going to say this. I am so certain of this that if by December 31st, 2030, this is not a CN property, or it hasn't been announced at the very least, if the first 100 people who have listened to this episode find me in person, I will pay you $5. That is how certain I am that this place is going to be CN within 5 years. There is no universe in which FTAI doesn't spin this around for a payday. Because that's their whole point. It's because Fortress is like a big VC company, but they sell these things off to other railroads. There is no way in hell that within the next decade, CN does not have a main line to the ore fields, the ore dock in Pennsylvania, like the ore docks in Pennsylvania and the steel mills in Pittsburgh and all the natural gas industry that the Wheeling serves and everything else, which, by the way, I didn't know this. CN also owns the Great Lakes Fleet, which is the, like, big American registered ore carriers. So they actually have a fully integrated system of sending the ore from the fields in Minnesota on the DMIR to the boats that they own, including the Arthur M. Anderson, the ship that was with the Edmund Fitzgerald when it sank, and then they sail those to Conneaut in Ohio, where they're dumped into Bessemer and Lake Erie trains to be sent down to Pittsburgh, which is owned by CN as well. So they could actually. So what I'm willing to bet is that with the purchase of the Wheeling, they could skip the lake entirely, or at least do it when the lake freezes over in the winter, and have round-the-year ore service to the blast furnaces in Pittsburgh. And the Wheeling also has direct access through trackage rights over CSX and Norfolk Southern to the big Cleveland Cliffs steel mill in Cleveland, which is one of the last, like, from-scratch, blast furnace steel mills. They make brand new steel mills in the country.
And yeah, if it's all going over the same railroad, it's going to be a lot cheaper than interchanging 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, it's not.
I can see how they're aiming for that as a more competitive edge.
Yeah, it's not the most direct route. It's definitely circuitous. They have to go several hundred miles out of the way through Pittsburgh, and then up and down and around, but it is entirely in-house at that point. And so the other thing is that none of this makes sense for any of the other class 1s, because the NS had to sell this as part of their actual what's it called? They're off as part of, like, the merger for NS from N&W and Southern. because it overlapped so much with their existing routes. And then, so NS still has like 3 different routes that already parallel this. The
Mm.
And CSX has the old B&O lines that go the same place. So there's no real point. The only other option is, I think, the Genesee in Wyoming buying this, at which point we can get a recreation of the alphabet network from the 1940s that the nickel plate and the Wheeling Lake Erie were part of, where you have like 17 different railroads offering one continuous through service to the from
That
New
would be
York to
kind of dope.
Yeah, except it's all Genesee and Wyoming. So you've got
Yeah, that's the not so dope part.
Yeah, and of course, in all of these scenarios, the Wheeling loses a great deal of its independence. It loses all the things that make it really interesting. Like the Wheeling, just this past year, the Wheeling allowed the nickel plate 765 to come out and run on their network without a diesel, which is the first time I've seen that happen in my life.
Yeah, practically unheard of today.
Yeah, they ran that. They praised hell and raised. They praised Dale and raised hell with that engine on the Wheeling. They were doing like line speed the whole way. That was incredible to watch, but that would never happen on CN. The Wheeling also has a bunch of really old power. Like, to date, they don't have a single wide cab unit in the fleet.
As God intended.
As the only thing
wide cabs are for wusses.
The only thing I would say that they need that they don't have is none of the locomotives have air conditioning. But which I've been told is so that yeah, no, that's the one thing I'm not too keen on. But they apparently do this so that if one engine breaks down, it has like the air conditioning breaking down, it can't lead. Which I'm like, well, then you should maybe run.
That's not.
I've seen how they run trains. It's not like they ever have engines that they run them elephant style. They never do that. So they usually run them back to back anyways, so it's not like a huge thing.
But I also wonder if they're I was not prepared for this bit. There are requirements for when air conditioning has to be added to a locomotive, but I think it's after a rebuild. So if they're doing enough work on these locomotives to keep it going, but not enough to be considered a rebuild, then
they
I guess that would.
When did that come into force? Because actually, a lot of their SD40-3 rebuilds were done entirely in house. Like that's like the other
2012, I think.
Okay, no, a lot of them were in like the early 2000s, but like that's another thing that I think we'd lose as a railroad community is that the Brewster shops have been around for over 100 years. They've built a lot of their own engines when they were an independent company in the 1900s. And just and they do work there. Like everything they do is basically in-house. They're almost entirely self-sufficient. And I think just like this would end up being one of those things like where the colony shops just sort of got abandoned up in, is that New York where that was the old D&H shops? Or is that
I don't know.
Or was that Main Central? I fear that it would enter the mythical realm of the big shop that closed down, which is something that we would lose.
Yeah,
but
you lose a lot of skill anytime that happens, which truly is the biggest tragedy of it all.
And so, I think from a business perspective, this is a genius idea for CN, assuming that it is CN that does this, which I think it is. But in either event, I think it's a genius scheme. I don't particularly like it as a foamer, but unfortunately, nostalgia does not make the world go around, and foamers really shouldn't run railroads. Anyways, let's go on to the next slide. Hey,
Jesus hell, what is that?
I did a great transition I did a great transition here. Foamers ruin everything. I'm amazing.
Foamer, okay. I want to be clear right here. When I'm talking about foamers, I'm not talking about your average Joe, no pun intended, standing out next to the tracks with a camera like our Joe was yesterday. You ever
And
seen that
today.
guy who who stands on the side of the track and goes, "Why is the dispatcher holding that train right there? He needs to be moving it over here so that the 26R blah 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 can come through and get its way down to Muskogee, Bumblefuck, Egypt, and get out of the way so that Amtrak can come through." That guy's the foamer. He probably doesn't smell like he's had a bath in about 2 weeks, and seems like he thinks
he's wearing a high-vis vest over a t-shirt that doesn't fit.
Oh yes, and he thinks he knows everything about the railroad. These are the foamers we're going to talk about today. These are the foamers I have an issue with in general. I don't care if you're standing next to the tracks with a camera. I'll wave at you. If I'm in a spot where I can, I'll probably tootle the horn at you just because I like seeing you smile. But if you're one of these assholes, you get on my nerves. And if you're one of these assholes with money, you probably have a good chance of killing somebody. So let's talk about how that happens with the next slide. So, today we are talking about Speedrail. And what the hell is Speedrail? Well, we need a little bit of background before we get into what was Speedrail. The background is incredibly complicated. I guess the prehistory of Speedrail is incredibly complicated. To boil it down, in the Milwaukee area.
To start with, there is this land called Milwaukee. It is full of artery disease.
This mythical
and
land.
Beer. People live there subsisting entirely upon cheese. We don't know how they do it. We believe it is part of their German DNA.
It has to be. There are so many German names involved with the story, too. It's hilarious. Like German and Polish. This is what happens. There is one Polish name that comes up later that when I was typing up the notes for this, I kept misspelling because I used to work with a Polish guy who had almost the exact same name. And I kept trying to type it as the way the guy I worked with spelled it.
This is probably what happens when you take Eastern Europeans and put them in a place where hopes and dreams are possible.
Would you call Milwaukee a land where hopes and dreams are where hopes and dreams are possible?
So we did the Dniepro-Dzerzhinsk disaster, which is what happens in old country.
Compared to that, yes.
Yeah, you take tram that is 45 minutes late because no one in village owns car. Tram runs away downhill, crashes into the street where no cars are. Everyone on board dies. As opposed to here, I've done well for myself. I'm the general floor manager at the dick sucking factory. I can buy a trolley if I want to.
Well, Milwaukee was apparently the place, and it thrived for quite a while, and as any good-sized city and the surrounding suburbs have, they had an interurban system. It was several different companies operating single lines. It eventually consolidated. The last respectful owner of the interurban system was the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Transport Company, and that they did pretty well up until 1949. And in the post-war period, we had lots of glorification of the automobile coming into effect. World War II was over. Interstate Highway Act, it was getting easier and more affordable to get yourself around with a car instead of having to rely on public transit like the interurban and the streetcars. So the interurban being run by the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Transport Company was not doing well. They were losing lots of money and hemorrhaging it until what do they call it? The TMER&T, which almost seems harder to pronounce than the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Transport Company. No, the L was before.
Oh.
That was the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Light Company, which that one company ran all the public transit and generated power from Milwaukee and the suburbs, and they were forced to split it up. Then the owner of the interurban became the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Transport Company.
Okay.
Because antitrust is weird. How does I guess the connection between power generating electric companies and interurbans isn't that far of a stretch. You make the power, you might as well sell some of it to the neighbors since you got so much of it. But they had to split that off. The TMER&T was losing money until by 1949, they only had 2 lines out of roughly 8 or 9 from the peak, from what I could see. And the 2 lines left went to Hales Corners and Waukesha, and they weren't doing well. So in 1949, everything. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just asking. Like, I'm so baffled by the pricing on this ad in the bottom here. How the fuck did they have $9,500 of power cost one year, but $4,400 the next year? Was that cutting lines, or did the dick sucking factory like go into overdrive so that they could suck off the power company? Like, I'm genuinely confused on this because I work in a company
don't know
with big electrical demand, and I don't get this.
We'll get into the suspiciousness of this here in just a few moments. Because in 1949, the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Transport Company was put up for sale, and an enterprising young man named John Edward Maeder bought it. John was a native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, born on March 11, 1908. But as a young man, his family moved to Cleveland, where he went to school
Even worse than Cleveland, he lived in Avon, which is sort of...
was it Cleveland?
No. Avon...
Or was it Avon? Excuse me.
Avon is part of... Okay, talking about suburban sprawl for a second. Avon is basically the last... Nowadays, I don't know what it was back then, but Avon was nowadays basically right about where the suburban sprawl starts on I-90 if you're coming to Cleveland from the west. So Avon is like part of the west side suburbs. It's where the Costco is, if that gives you any idea of what it's like now.
Suburban hell.
So it also was on an interurban line. The Lakeshore Electric was all over the place. There's multiple electric avenues in the place where you can listen to Eddie Grant while thinking about how there used to be streetcars. And actually, right down the street in Avon Lake, which is like the last bit of civilization before you get into the boonies where I live, we're ignoring Lorraine because Lorraine is like like imagine Philadelphia, but from a rural Pennsylvanian sort of view. There in Avon Lake, there's an LSE car on display in a parking lot. So, the LSC was a huge influence on the whole area in like the early...
So what was the LSC?
Lakeshore Electric.
Lakeshore, like, okay.
Yeah. It ran everything around here for a good long while. Like, every town had a car at one point. Even where I live, it was just like a little dinky that went up and down Main Street.
So there was so much electric railway history in this that I had a hard time keeping track and an even harder time narrowing it down. So John Maeder decided to buy this chunk. He got the line that went to Waukesha. And Waukesha or Waukesha?
I believe it's Waukesha.
Waukesha was first. It was a few months later after, let me see. He bought the Waukesha line September 2nd, 1949. Didn't get the Hales Corners line until December 3rd.
Okay.
But he saw an opportunity to get his own railroad, and he wanted it. So he went out and did it. A little bit more about Maeder. He went to the St. John's Military Academy in Delafield, Wisconsin after high school. He was a combat officer in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers until sometime after World War II. I know he got in 1942. I have no clue when he was discharged, honorably or otherwise. A newspaper article about the purchase of this and the formation of the Milwaukee Speedrail, which, as it was formerly known, just referred to him as a Cleveland Milwaukee Rapid Transit and Speedrail, wasn't it?
Yes, it's
yeah, there it is at the bottom.
You put in the slide.
I know. I've got a whole page of notes in front of me, and I was looking at it, and I couldn't remember if I put that in there or not. I'm looking more at the notes than the screen, unfortunately.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the screen. I asked. Ordinarily, I'd be handling some of this, but I don't know enough about interurban and trolley ops as opposed to Zach.
This section, this little bit right here, I probably should have asked you to take care of because, my God, sorry. I am a Southern boy. I don't know anything about you weird Wisconsinites. Okay,
I don't live in Wisconsin either. They're all weird.
I'm not saying you do, but surely somebody from Wisconsin will hear this.
Yeah, but probably.
The purchase of this line came with some cars. I am not sure which ones, but they were older cars that weren't in the greatest condition, but were still doing pretty well and were pretty comfortable. But because Maeder is a turbo foamer, he decided to buy cars from the Shaker Heights electric line in Shaker Heights, Ohio,
which is part of Cleveland.
They were so unpopular that passengers would actively complain to anybody and everybody who would listen. One passenger referred to riding in one of these Shaker Heights cars as akin to riding over Niagara Falls in a barrel.
So he's actually standing on one of the Shaker cars in the ad, if that's him in the ad.
That is not. I have no clue who that is. I got so excited because I was like, oh, we finally found a modern picture of him. And no, it's not him at all. I have no clue who the hell that is and why he's in this ad.
Randomly photographed man is standing on a Shaker Rapid car. I have a slide about those in a little bit. That is about the only subject in this that I have been able to contribute to. But,
well, I don't know if they still ride as bad as they used to, but Maeder felt the need to put out these rebuttal ads. We all know these quote-unquote lightweights weren't new when they started rolling along the Waukesha, Milwaukee TM tracks. Some came from thousands of miles away. Some came from South Milwaukee. They came to do a job for you, and lo, they're doing it. Basically, this whole ad is, we know it sucks. We're trying to get better, so please shut up and deal with it and keep buying service, keep buying rides on here so that we can improve this a little bit.
Well, the reason why
even references, sure, there are kinks in the service, annoying, aggravating little nuisances. This was a weird ad for them to put.
Yeah. Well, the whole reason why these cars probably sucked is that the Shaker Rapid was, some of it was grade separated services. Some of it was street level and ran through there. So I'm sure that they weren't entirely up to what was doing. And even then, the Shaker cars hadn't come from Shaker originally. They had come from Elgin, Illinois, with the Fox River Electric. Is that what it was? Yeah, the Fox River Electric.
Yeah, okay. I'd only seen brief reference to it, and I hadn't written that one down.
You'll see why I know all this, but it's the Fox Lake or Electric or something. God, what? Aurora,
ladies
Elgin,
and gentlemen,
and Fox
you are
River.
listening to a pair of professionals right now.
Elgin, and Fox River is what it was. It was.
We got there eventually.
Aurora, Elgin, and Fox River, which was it's in like the upper communities near in North Chicago. They had them. They sold them to Shaker. Shaker then, I guess, disposed of some of them to Speedrail. Uh, Several of them came back afterwards, which we'll get to. But these were probably not designed for whatever John Maeder was trying to put them through, and they definitely were probably worn into the ground at this stage.
Oh, probably. Every bit of suspension was probably just shot.
Like these things were I think these things were getting replaced by PCCs in Cleveland. So
probably because PCCs are rad.
So yeah. So that's just sort of what we're dealing with at this stage.
But this is a good example of exactly the kind of weird things that John Maeder would do, which I should be clear, somewhere around this time, he stopped calling himself Jay Maeder, or he stopped calling himself John Maeder and referred to himself as Jay Maeder, I guess going by a spelling of his first initial. The question you're asking earlier about these power conducting numbers that he shows in the ads, trying to show that he's cutting costs, I have no clue where he's getting them, because he's running the exact same routes that the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Transport Company had been. He's running the same infrastructure, the same communications, the same signaling. The only thing that would be different is some of the cars that he bought to bring in on this. And I can't imagine that some of these smaller, slower cars were using so much less energy that you almost cut your power bill in half.
I honestly have no idea. I could. I am
pretty sure he lied. He lies a lot. We'll see some more of that later in the episode.
Yeah, I do also like, if we're assuming that he lied, that in 1948 the power conducting was a flat $9,500, and in 1949 it was such a specific number, which is what would happen when you're trying to sell the lie.
Yeah.
Like, no, it wasn't
just a seemingly random number that, it seems like somebody didn't just, that's a nice round number that looks good. No. That's a very odd, specific number, so it has to be true.
Uh-huh. So, yeah, it's totally true. Although, also, I like how many different things he's done with himself. Gray president. I mean, this photo is in black and white, so obviously. Editor-in-chief of the yearbook. Football, baseball, basketball, glee club, orchestra, cartoon club, and review board. So,
I want you to keep that cartoon club in the back of your head for a little while, because that's going to have a very weird connection.
I'm so scared. But also, do you think, considering this is his yearbook, do you think that he's the editor-in-chief of the yearbook, do you think he actually did football, baseball, basketball, glee club, orchestra, cartoon club, and review board? Or did he just say he did? Who is going to fact check him?
Ooh.
The guy who wrote the yearbook?
I mean, the editor-in-chief, I imagined it had to be something similar to like the yearbook club that we see today. There's got to be a sponsor that's ultimately going through and, gives everybody roles to give them an idea, but ultimately has the final say. It's like, no, you can't confess your undying love for Susie and a full color spread in the middle of the yearbook just because you're the editor-in-chief, John.
Maybe he got all this in by writing also possesses 10-foot long schlong. I don't know.
Or he snuck it in at the very last second because he was the editor-in-chief. Who knows?
Who knows?
There is very little information available. Most of what I can find is this one snippet from the yearbook in which I found a PDF of the entire yearbook. He has no other mention in there whatsoever. Like I couldn't even find a group photo with him in it. There was this, all the accounts around the incident that we're going to talk about today, and his obituary. And that was about it.
Maybe it's like
I can't even understand. I don't even know what he did between when he left the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer and purchasing Speedrail.
I could put on my tinfoil hat and say that it was like in Mad Men where Don Draper took someone else's identity. And this is how do we know you're really Jay Maeder? Anyways, I feel like if we do that, that's the path to madness.
Well, so now we have one player in today's game, and that's Jay Maeder and Speedrail, which that seems like it should be two entities, but Jay Maeder was Speedrail, and we'll see exactly what that means coming up. Let's talk about the next one by going to the next slide. And we've got grown men playing with model trains, and a whole lot of them
they're all
grouped around one very.
They're all
wearing suits. Every single one of them, because these are all members of the National Model Railroad Association. If you haven't heard of this before, it's a national club that is for people who enjoy making model railroads. At the time that it was formed in 1935, it was a very important thing to the hobby because it provided a one-stop shop for resources and socialization and being able to exchange ideas at a time when there was no internet, and phone calls that went further than down the street were insanely expensive.
Yeah. It also is a great place to talk about how you like doing the same thing at the same time every day and never deviating from that on pains of having a meltdown in your own house. I'm sure that there's no word for that, but they soldiered on regardless.
I am sure that at least half the men in this photo have gotten mad at their autistic grandchild for being quote unquote weird.
Oh no.
Guaranteed. I'm willing to bet on it. I don't know any of these. These could all be good people, but I'll bet you half of them have gotten mad at their autistic grandkid because they didn't like to be touched, and that was weird.
Uh-huh. Oh,
but
absolutely.
100%.
It's like
the NMRA.
You've got to remember that these are the guys who get really upset, who came up with the idea of detailing locomotives so they look exactly like the ones in real life. It's like,
oh yes, getting your model train to match the prototype exactly was a huge thing, and that's part of what the NMRA did, was allow people to exchange resources so that, Tom over here in Wisconsin was able to get the exact dimensions and details of this locomotive. So now Billy down in Florida can maybe see that in a magazine that's distributed by the NMRA. And says, I want to do that, and can get in contact with Tom in Wisconsin.
And people,
and that's largely how it worked.
And people are reading about the gory and defeated, and like their third eye opens as they read the NMRA digest on it.
That was such a great model railroad. If you haven't heard about the tragedy of the gory and defeated by John Allen,
oh my god!
I would say just search for John Allen Model Railroad, because gory and defeated is not spelled the way you think it is, but you'll get his story no matter what.
I've never seen a model railroad's life force tied to a guy before. He died.
Oh, there was lore in that.
He died of a heart attack, having built the world's greatest model railroad at the time. And within 3 days, the layout burned to the ground, taking all but like 10 models with it that he had sent to friends.
Yep.
It's the greatest model railroad that doesn't exist anymore. There is, if you play Rolling Line, someone has recreated it in Rolling Line. It's insane. I haven't played it yet, but it's the fact that someone did that is great.
Joe, we got to get back on topic, bro.
We really don't, but continue. What's the next slide?
We're not on the next slide yet. I'm going to give y'all a quick brief on the NMRA has annual conventions, which was just a gathering for a chance for everybody nationwide to gather up in one spot, sell sell supplies and kits related to model railroading, get a face-to-face exchange, socialize with each other, and they would usually have special activities associated with the convention. A lot of the times this involved going out and actually riding on trains in the area, because every year the location of the convention changed, and it would be hosted in usually a major city, and there was almost always some train trip that they could take. However, Milwaukee was always a special convention. The NMRA had only been founded 15 years prior to the time we're going to talk about, and it was founded in Milwaukee. So there was always a homecoming feeling to the Milwaukee conventions. And the 1950 convention was no exception to that. They decided to make it even more special because prior conventions had only been 3 days. In 1950, they decided to expand, and by specifically placing this convention on Labor Day weekend, they were able to bump it up to 4 days of a convention. And that was going to be September 1st to September 4th, 1950. One of the activities that was going to be on this over a couple of days, so that everybody had a chance to go out, ride different lines, different cars, different times a day, was going to be trips on the Speedrail on both lines they had. And that was as much as they could do. It was kind of a special thing because the Speedrail was one of the last interurban services still running in the US. So many people were excited about the opportunity to be able to go out and ride one of these cars as part of the convention. So let's now go to the... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and one other thing, just to note, especially about why Milwaukee has the hometown feel. Do you know what else is headquartered in Milwaukee, or was found at the time?
Kalmbach Publishing, wasn't it?
Kalmbach Publishing, publisher of Model Rail. Yeah, Kalmbach Publishing, publisher of Model Railroader magazine since 1934, and more recently, this new upstart publication called Trains. So they
and
it's definitely
Al Kalmbach was present at this convention,
as were a lot of his staff, because this is what you do when, like, the foamers come to town, is you go and when you work for the foamer industry, you kind of go out there.
You show up and you show out.
And this is not like nowadays when, like, the big magazines have like 10 people on staff. Kalmbach had an entire building for a long while.
Yeah, they had a lot. But they were the authority on this, so of course they're going to be at the convention of the group that is the authority on this.
Yeah. So anyways, we're going on to the next slide.
Yeah, let's look at that next slide. What do we have here? We have two very different interurban cars, but both of them look pretty cool. Top left is the former Milwaukee Electric Line's articulated car. We're only looking at the front two bits that look like two separate cars there. They're painted yellow with either dark green or black stripes. It's actually one car that is articulated. That was built in 1929 by the Cincinnati Car Company. One of those sections was built as what's called a combine car. The front, probably third or so, was for baggage and freight, and the rest of the space was seating for passengers. But in an unknown year, somewhere prior to 1949, it was rebuilt as this articulated car that had two sections. The two sections shared a common middle truck, and it was only seating for passengers in there. There was no baggage or freight section. This thing was big and it was heavy. And I want to put an emphasis on the heavy, and that part of that was just due to the sheer size of it. Like if you see just to the right of that car, there is a door on the side of that building that probably stands, I don't know, 7, maybe 8 feet tall. It's a slightly larger than normal man-sized doorway, and this car towers over it. It's
Yeah,
huge.
and to like give another thing, there's the other trolley cars parked behind it, the orange ones, which I actually think are both the lightweights that are in the corner of the picture, and then behind it, depending on if that's like a difference in roofline or like if they're just like a photo like artifact, I think that might actually be the old shaker cars behind it as well, like behind those in this lineup of like of like different vehicles. I'm not certain.
Well, I'm not sure about the very back one, but there. So what looks like 6 cars right there is actually just 3. They're all
Oh,
articulated
they're all
sets
articulated?
of 2 cars. Yeah, they're all articulated sets of 2 cars each. But that second pair behind the one that we were just talking about uh, is that's not the exact same one as what we see down here on the bottom right, but it is the same type. Bottom right shows some of the lightweight cars that came with the acquisitions that created the Speedrail. Train cars number 39 and 40 were another articulated pair. They were built by the St. Louis Car Company as the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Light numbers 1039 and 1040. They were built in 1930 as this articulated set. They used a lot of cost cutting techniques to make them cheaper to run, including being just a 2-man car despite having 2 different sections. You didn't need a conductor in both sections. You could just have a conductor on the back section and a motorman in the front. They also used construction techniques that made them lighter, which allowed them to be faster and more economical to run because the same motors could move a car faster because they weren't having to haul as much weight around. Uh, the the big issue with this is that there's a significant difference in size between these 2 trains. And
Yeah,
that
as you can
is a
kind of
rather
see.
dangerous thing. Yeah, you could see in that top left photo just the difference in the height, the difference in the window level. The trucks on the 2 different cars probably have a 1.5 foot difference in height.
The goddamn
They
sill
weren't.
height even like fucking
Yeah,
anti-climber isn't going to do shit over that. It's above it in the first place.
yeah, that's exactly right. As such, they weren't very popular to be run together. Most of the time, they tried to keep if they had to have both lightweight and heavyweight cars out on the system, they would keep heavyweight cars on one side, lightweight cars on the other, so that they were on different directions. They would only meet up with a lightweight car would only meet up with lightweight cars. Heavyweight would only meet with heavyweight cars. And the only exception to that would be in Milwaukee proper, where speeds were so slow and things were much more calm because they're running through city streets that if a collision happened, number one, it was much less likely to happen due to lower speeds. But if it did, the slower speeds would mean that the damage would be to pride and property at most. You're not going to kill somebody by just lightly bumping into the back of a lightweight car with one of the heavyweights.
Yeah. And
But the best laid plans of mice and men can go awry. And we'll see a bit more of that here in just a moment. I think you actually have
I added
a contribution in the next slide.
I do have a contribution because these aren't the only trains that they're running on the system. So we're going to go to the next slide. Also running on the system are the Shaker Rapid cars at the same time. There's proof of this. There's video proof of this, actually from the day of the accident, which is something I'll mention when we get further into it. But the Shaker cars are okay. So if we're just assuming that like the heavyweights are like a modern electric pickup that weighs like 8,000 pounds, like a Hummer EV, right? The electric the lightweight cars are more like a mid-sized SUV, right? Like a Ford Escape, just as an example. The Shaker cars are like driving around in a 90s midsize, like a Toyota Camry from the 90s. These things are made of wood, mostly. They have concrete floors. And the bodies are like they're the same steel and wood composite that you get in a lot of them. They are not resilient to an accident. These are from an entirely different generation of streetcars. And note I said streetcars, not an interurban car. So I'm going to give you guys a quick explanation as to what I'm talking about. So these are these photographs, including the one of me, which I love this photograph, are the 3 surviving ex-Shaker cars. On the far left, which I am snuggled right up against, is Shaker car 304. That was at the Fox River Trolley Museum in Elgin, Illinois. Great museum if you ever get the chance to go out to. In the center is, I believe this is in Fox River and Elgin, Aurora. Oh God, the long name trolley company that I Googled a moment ago. That's in their colors. This is car 306. That's at IRM. And then up in the upper corner, Jesus, in the upper right corner is car 303. This is at Northern Ohio Railway Museum, where I volunteer at. So this is our car. It's our current restoration project. Theoretically, in the very near future, all 3 of these cars can be mobile at the same time. Unfortunately, they're not in the same place, but they could all be run at the exact same moment in time. Car 303 is very interesting because it has had both of its ends stove in and replaced in accidents. Okay, so the more major of the two is the one that actually the damage it had when the museum I volunteer at, Norm, got it, which is that a lot of these cars in the Cleveland area ended up at this organization called Trolleyville USA, which was a guy, again, just some guy, who owned a shopping complex / housing development in the general Cleveland area, decided that he was just going to throw in a trolley loop, like a streetcar loop, in his property. And so he had like 60 cars. Like, he had so fucking many. I cannot.
It was a ridiculous amount.
It was so goddamn
for just
many.
Some guy.
Yeah, for just some guy. Like, I need you to understand that if you have ridden in a trolley that came out of Ohio, and even some places that were in Ohio, there is a null chance that it didn't come out of Trolleyville. Like anything.
There is supposed to be one in Dallas that came out of Trolleyville.
Absolutely, because Seashore has them. IRM has them. IRM got 306 from Trolleyville. I think 304 might have, but I don't remember the specifics. 303 came from Trolleyville. Like, everything came out of there. But the thing that we need to... And the end of the story is that the guy died in like the early 2000s. His family didn't want to continue with this, just like with the wheeling we talked about a moment ago. And actually, tying this further into the news, vehicles of different sizes running on the same track. Can anyone translate this into Spanish for our Mexican friends listening? But anyways, so at Trolleyville at some point, 303 was the subject of a rather unfortunate collision when another car, I don't know which one, lost its brakes during a shunting move and essentially rolled away and smashed into it. And just that low speed, nothing, pride and what did you say? Pride and property? That impact completely staved in the front end. Completely staved in the front end of the car. I don't know which end. I believe it's the end that's closest to the camera in this one. But
there is a story about one of these losing its brakes in service and a poor motorman being stranded overnight somewhere out near Hales Corners because nobody knew how to fix the issue until they could wake up the one guy who did know how to fix it from being just absolutely dead tired, asleep with the dead. Once they finally got him to wake up, he showed up and went, "Oh yeah, you got to do this," and then fixed it after they were sitting out there literally overnight.
Jesus. But anyways, and then but the thing is that 303, that's not the only time 303 had its front staved in. The other time is what we at Norm call the elephant story. So the elephant story, this is going to be a bit of levity in this episode. The elephant story is that at some point, I believe while it was in service in Cleveland, car 303 was going down a dark street. I don't know, again, the entire specifics of how this happened, but ahead of it, on the street, maybe around the corner, there was a circus in town. And as circuses do, they parade their equipment through town on their way to the venue site. The last vehicles, air quotes, in the parade were the elephants. 303 came up on the elephants, and a rear-end collision occurred. 303's
How the hell do you run into an elephant?
303's front was stove. The other end of 303, the one that's faced away from the camera, was staved in and had to be replaced. Again, collision with an elephant. This was also a fatal crash because the elephant's motorman died. The guy riding the guy riding the elephant was killed in this accident. Based on the description that I've been told, I believe this guy was probably black, and so nobody gave two shits that he was dead.
Oh,
very, very much in the disposable labor category of people at this particular point in time that the events occurred. But the circus was very upset with the streetcar company having lost the use of their elephant. So there was a lawsuit that was involved. And the lawyers for the streetcar company, because this was at the point when the streetcar company didn't have two nickels to rub together. So they didn't have the ability to, they really did not want to compensate for this elephant. But the story goes that the lawyers went to the next show that the circus was performing, and the elephant was in a cast doing its normal routine. And so that lawsuit went away. But
ooh.
Yeah,
can't afford to have him sit out. Nope.
So anyways, the moral of this, what I'm trying to say, is that these cars are not resilient in the face of an accident. And the fact that they're running them in service with these incredibly heavyweight cars and the fast lightweight cars is sort of like the Corridor Interoceano running HST 125s, full-sized U.S. gauge freight trains, and that little tram train all together.
What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, so many things. Do we want to go on to the next slide?
Yeah, let's talk about something that maybe could help things from going wrong. We're going to take a look at very early signal systems. This was a signal system called the Nachod Signal system, made by the Nachod Signal Company, that the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Light Company had installed on their lines. Now, these were not placed everywhere along the line, but rather they were placed immediately before a single section or a single track section. And what it did was it would tell the motorman whether or not they could leave the siding or the spur that they were in and continue on the single track section without running into another train.
Okay.
So I am so happy that I was able to find this. For some reason, I would like to give a huge thanks to the Ballarat Tramway Museum in Victoria, New South Wales, because for some reason they held on to a 1920 brochure for these signals, scanned it in, and it's available on the internet for everybody to see. And this is straight from the manufacturer. The signal is comprised of 3 parts. It has 2 lights that make up the 2 lobes you see on the bottom left. The top section is a physical disc. There's actually two of them in there, a red one and a white one, and they rotate in and out of view as appropriate. So on the far left, we see both lights are off. The black section up top indicates that there's no disc visible because the two discs are white and red. If you see black, nothing is showing. This is your indicator that there is nothing in the block ahead. You can, if you're allowed to, you can proceed past that signal and it'll be fine. However, when you enter this block, the car does not just physically get into the single track section. The interurbans and the streetcars that would use this have poles on the car that have a little shoe or a wheel on the end of it that reaches up and touches the overhead wire. And that's how that overhead wire carries the electricity that powers these cars. Well, tied to these signals was a little thing that sat over the overhead wire. It was roughly semicircle shape. It was about 3 feet long, and it was one big contact point. So when the pole of a streetcar or an interurban would go underneath this contactor, the pressure from the pole would push the wire up and make it touch that contact, and then the signal system would count, and it would recognize that there was a car entering the single track section, and it could count up to 12 different cars entering the signal block. So this allowed for such great things as a train going into a single track section, turning around. Maybe there was a freight customer that had to be switched out, and coming back out the same way. It did not have to leave out the opposite end for the system to reset. It could come in and out the same way. And if it was just that one, the signal would count that car going in and keep a red signal up that would say, I've got one car in here. And then when it came right back out the same way, it would touch that contact again, and the signal system would go, oh, there's that one. It's now safe to enter this block. The middle we see is what you could see when you were starting to enter the single block section, having seen the neutral indication on the far left. You start to enter it, a white light and a white disc would display momentarily, and you're supposed to verify, as the motorman, you're supposed to verify that yes, this signal system has recognized that I am entering it. I am now protected. And then behind that car and on the opposite end of the signal system of that single track section, a counterpart signal would then display a red light and a red disc. And now that block was protected from a train coming up behind it, possibly going faster, or from another train entering from the opposite direction. And if you'll click once, it actually pulls up a brief summary of this straight from the brochure.
I already did because I thought that I had forgotten to click it before, but so it's up.
Oh, okay. Well, now I can see what everybody else has. It says that a motorman standing in front of the signal and before passing the contactor understands, if the indication is red, that the car or cars in the block ahead are approaching him. If the indication is white, the car is leaving him and he may enter under control if schedule permits. If the indication is neutral, the block is vacant. So that white light is only on when a car is actively touching that contact that you hit coming in or out of the section. And it tells you whether or not you're being counted or somebody's being counted going out. Okay, otherwise, so if there's somebody in the block, it says red.
I can see ways to game this, but also this is like some 1920s clockwork bullshit, so I'm not faulting them. But I have a question that I feel may become prescient soon. Is it possible for one car coming at the other end of the block to touch the contactor at the exact moment another car rolls in the other way. And so they both think they've got a white light, not realizing that somebody else is coming.
If you timed it perfectly, yes.
Is that going to have any bearing on why we're talking about this?
From what I have understood, no.
Okay. So,
But Jay Maeder is a lying piece of shit, and we'll get into that.
okay.
So these signals weren't the end all be all of train control on the Speedrail, because they were not authority. They were confirmation.
Yeah, they weren't.
The authority came from the timetable.
They weren't.
They were not centrally controlled. That's why they were so popular, was because they could be left unattended. You didn't have to wire miles of cable to a central office and have them control it. It was entirely automated, and it was fail safe in that if any part of that circuit was broken, it would every signal tied to that circuit would show red.
Okay. So I understand how this works now. This is definitely not an ideal system, but it is critically better than nothing.
It was actually very advanced for the time. It was so popular that they were able to hold patents on it, and they sold this for decades. I think the first patent was in 1906, and I found references to them continuing use in Toronto specifically up into the early 50s.
Okay.
So that's 40 some years of continuous use. I don't know when they were installed on the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Transport, and Light, since that's what it was at the time. But they were pretty solid, and like all of the control circuits and the relays were actually housed in a box that was completely filled with oil, so there was no corrosion, but it still allowed electrical pulses to flow through there and operate. You just had to go out every so often to make sure that the seals on the box were okay and that there was enough oil in there to keep everything covered.
I mean, no, it's a phenomenal system for its time. It's just, as opposed to like
absolutely,
a CTC control system or something like that. Or
yes,
it's not exactly moving block signals with moving block cab signals, is it?
No, absolutely not. But as part of the safety of it, as I said, this was not to be treated as authority. It was to be treated as confirmation. The authority came from timetables. So if you were told to meet a train, if you're told that your train had to take the siding at B Town, and you're going north and you had to meet a southbound train going to Elephantsville, well, you might be ready to go to B Town. It's the time that you're supposed to leave this siding, but you haven't seen the train to Elephantsville yet. And that signal may be showing that the block is clear, but you still haven't actually seen the car. So you can either sit and wait, or usually there was a telephone posted near these signals, and call the dispatcher and see if you could get permission to proceed on your regular timetable, or if you needed to wait a few more minutes for that car to Elephantsville to actually show up. So it was, like I said, it was confirmation. It was a check and balance, so to speak.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good system. There are a lot of people who I think rightfully argue that it was scapegoated, when this seems to be the only incident I can find where anybody claims that the signals were at fault. Every other system that ran them had no issues with them.
Yeah, it really seems
eventually they just got replaced by CTC or other systems as parts were made not available as time went on.
Yeah, it really seems like the only way you could actually, assuming that you did everything right, was if you had the worst timing of any human being on the planet.
Yeah.
And you and you and the oncoming car hit the contactor at the exact same time. But
That's really what it would take. The chances of that are extremely low. And later we'll see Maeder try to blame this on what happened.
okay.
Or try to blame what happened on this absolute freak coincidence that probably didn't happen.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit more about the reputation of a railroad being owned by a foamer. And oh, look at that. That's a wreck.
Am I only supposed to be seeing an image on one side of the screen right now? Are we going to be going on?
There will be something else on the right side. Don't bring it up yet.
That's what I. Yep.
So,
okay.
So on the left, we can see that there is another accident with Speedrail cars, but that's not the accident we saw earlier. Still looks kind of ugly, but it not as bad as the other one. Well, this was one of the instances where Speedrail's deferred maintenance and a cost-cutting attempt kind of came back to bite them in the ass. The smaller, lighter car.
That's a shaker car on the ground right now.
That is a shaker car on the ground. Was sitting in a siding, waiting for the much larger interurban car to pass it on the next track over.
That's one of the lightweights, isn't it?
I can't remember. I can't remember if that series was a lightweight.
Well, no, because the one that we were talking about before was 3940, and this is 43. So this is one of the lightweights, which refer to my comment again, 90s Camry versus modern midsize SUV.
True. I didn't look up the specifics of this. I did see that the car that actually remained on the tracks was still notably heavier, despite it being a quote unquote lightweight.
Yeah.
But car number 43 on the right was trying to pass car number 65. Everything, for all intents and purposes, should have gone well, except that they didn't maintain their switches properly. So car number 43 actually split a switch, and instead of going straight down the main, it started diverging towards car number 65 sitting in the siding. And it was so much heavier than car 65 that it completely pushed 65 off the rails.
And through a telephone.
And will you please bring up the next image?
Oh, no. Oh,
The Wisconsin Electric Power Company refers all of its damage claims to this office for disposition. This claim is the result of an accident which occurred on February 8, 1950, when rapid transit car number 65 struck and broke poles number 451113 and TMB 123, located on the north side of the rapid transit line, west of Sunny Slope Road. The cost of repairing the damage was $167.81. Please refer this matter to your insurance carrier for its immediate attention. Yours very truly, Alfred J. something. I can't read that. Alfred J. Paulson, excuse me. Now look at the date of that. The date of the accident was February 8, 1950. The date of the letter is April 18th, 1950. Jay Maeder did not like to pay his bills. He liked to spend his money on doing cool things with his toy trains. And a little inconsequential thing such as paying the power company for damage that his company caused to their property was of no matter to him. He was not going to pay that $167.81.
Do you know how much that is in modern money?
I did not look it up. Did you?
Yes, I did. So it won't let me do decimals. So $168 is $2,240.92 in modern money.
What should be a relatively small amount for
not a lot for
a public transit company.
And that's not a lot for a telephone pole, I'll be real honest with you.
That's for the pole itself, getting it installed, moving the equipment, which I'm just going to presume was fine and didn't have to be replaced, just moved from the old pole to the new one, and the labor of the men who put that up.
Yeah, that's
Jay Maeder was so cheap that he didn't want to pay for that. And Another thing that he didn't like to pay for was training. I have a quote here from a man named Don Leistokow, who was a motorman for Speedrail. He said, "I don't remember any rules exam on Speedrail. We were out for 3 days operating 60s, which was a small fleet of single section cars, like the one on the left in this photo, and Arctics, which were the big double section articulated cars. In that process, we were oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I read this too. I cannot believe it. This is the most
Oh, yeah.
40s shit ever.
Oh, yeah. In that process, we were constantly reminded of the location of 3-color block signals, which I didn't find any other reference to anywhere, and the operation of Nachod block signals was thoroughly explained by John Heberling. John Heberling is going to show up again later. We even went into the hole, which is a siding, along the Hales Corner line and saw how the signals looked from the opposing end. Telephone booths were pointed out, and we used them in training. Significantly, we did not take written orders over the phone, and written orders were not being issued from the PSB. And the PSB was the public service building where the Speedrail dispatch office was located. Do you remember talking about train orders via telephone in the Texas Electric Railway episode?
I do. I'm getting a lot of flashbacks to the Texas Electric episode.
And how important being able to properly take a train order over the phone is?
Yeah.
Jay Maeder didn't think that that was important enough to be taught.
Of course not.
No, because Jay Maeder was a man-child.
Because
who
he
just wanted to cool trains.
He made the schedule, so you should just do the schedule and don't fuck it up.
Except when he tells you to not do the schedule.
And just do what I tell you and don't fuck it up. I know how this goes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's go to that next slide. And I don't know why I put a transition on that image. There's only one on here. Now that dashing fella right down there, standing with his foot up proudly on the step of his car, is Jay Maeder himself. He is standing there with his, I guess it's like a proto-broccoli hair cut he has, smoking a cigarette and just looking absolutely dapper.
They had car 39 repainted the night before for this.
The night before. This was one of the NMRA specials that had been chartered for this convention on September 2nd, 1950. And Jay was so proud of this that on the night of September 1st, he brought out this new scheme. The colors were the same. The darker section that you see was a maroon. The lighter sections were orange. The colors weren't new, but the wings along the side coming out from the nose of the car were new.
Yeah, I wish that color film had been cheaper at this point in time.
Oh, I think I found one photo of this car, but it showed the color, but the image that I found was so small that all of you, if you were watching this on a TV or a monitor, you would have had your face right up against the screen trying to see it. Or if you were watching it on your phone, you wouldn't have been able to see it at all. And if I made it any bigger, it was just going to get so blown out and pixelated that you couldn't tell what you were looking at.
Yeah. No, it's a shame. I once saw a slideshow that was just entirely color photographs of 50s streamliners. Oh my God.
Now, there is another man in that image that is a motorman named George Walter. He had been assigned to this trip, but Jay Maeder came along. Jay wanted to be very hands-on in the day-to-day operations of this for this convention. He really wanted to show off. Don Leistokow had another quote about this that said, Ed Tennyson Speedrail's general manager and a veteran of Pittsburgh Railway operations, understood that this day was going to be busy. For that day, he had written up a bulletin to be issued to all crews for the day, detailing important things like how many NMRA extras were involved, departure times for the extras, and meeting points with the other trains, and emphasizing that any train that fell behind schedule by more than 5 minutes needed to take the nearest siding and call in for revised orders. This was the kind of practice that the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Light and its veteran employees would have understood. Maeder instead took back all the bulletins without telling Tennyson, and instead told the crews to call in to the dispatcher from every siding, something that the line side phone system and dispatching policy were not set up to handle. If the dispatcher needed to hold a train somewhere, they could not contact a train out in the field unless they stopped and called in to the dispatcher. There were no train order boards and no way to set a red block in front of a motorman or indicate that he needed to call the dispatcher. To continue with that quote, service began breaking down from the very start that morning as a result. Tennyson tried to salvage some order by asking the dispatcher to issue orders at the office before departure, in essence restoring his service bulletin strategy that Maeder had yanked away, but emphasized that any train falling behind schedule by more than 5 minutes needed to get off the railroad and call the dispatcher for new orders. And by off the railroad, he just means get into a siding, get off of the main line. Being out in the field, though, there wasn't much he could do to put it into effect, especially with Maeder himself, who had been locking horns with Tennyson from the start of Speedrail at the controls of one of the NMRA extras.
I love vibes-based railroading so much. Also, why did you hire this man if you don't like him?
If you don't, I think he may have come along with the purchase of the railroad. I think he was already employed by the Milwaukee Electric Railway and Transport Company, maybe even long enough to have worked for it when it was the Electric Railway and Light Company. But it seemed to be a bit of a package deal. A lot of employees were there and subsequently left, not looking to lose their pension with the organization that owned both companies. A lot of them just transferred over to the Light Company.
Yeah, a lot of them. That's right, because it said that Jay Maeder had been expecting a turnkey railroad, and instead,
yes,
a lot of the guys left. Yeah, and that's why.
So,
oh my God, could you imagine being a wide-eyed idealist, Jay Maeder, who was like Saul Goodman levels of like lying, and then you show up to this railroad that was advertised to be working perfectly, and everybody's like, "Yeah, I quit." And now you've got to deal with this. And it's like, things are not going my way. This can't happen to me.
Oh, you have to train a whole new generation of motormen, which is why you get things like these guys just going out for 3 days and seeing the line and not learning how to copy train orders. But why was Jay on this train in particular?
Because it's the pretty
Did you happen to read that one?
It's the pretty...
No. He saw it in a dream.
You're
Jay Maeder,
kidding me.
In a quote, a direct quote from the trial that will come later. Because, let me see, I dreamed of a train coming around a curve at me many, many times, maybe 50 times in my sleep. Because of this dream, I determined to be close to the operation of the chartered trains Saturday. I went along on one of the trains and took control so that nothing would happen because of my dream.
Motherfucker, that's not a dream, that's a premonition. You caused this!
And we'll get into how. But the day of these charges, everybody seemed to be siding with Mr. Tennyson, especially the guys that had previously worked for him prior to Speedrail. And they seem to be highly influencing like the newer operators, saying like, hey, if you got two bulletins that are conflicting, go with the one that has Tennyson's name on it. All right. That guy knows what he's doing. So most everybody was doing that. They were running per the timetable, only stopping to call the dispatcher if they fell more than 5 minutes behind schedule. Maeder wanted trains to stop at every siding and call in, but he didn't even do that himself. On his own train, he departed Hales Corners northbound and passed by 2 sidings without stopping to call the dispatcher. He did stop at one and let a train come by, but he didn't call the dispatcher for further instructions. So he wasn't even following his own rules. He also messed with things a lot when he had initially told the members of the NMRA that were on his train that they would not be stopping anywhere on the northbound trip back to Milwaukee for photo opportunities. And he let them hem and haw and complain. And he finally decided to show himself off as a good guy and say, all right, come on, we'll do a couple of photo stops. And I guess he wanted to show that he was the merciful and benevolent railroad baron and gave 2 extra stops to allow for members to get off and take pictures. I mean, this wasn't even... Go ahead.
And those motherfuckers probably complained the whole time. I've been on photo charters.
Oh, and they were probably slow as shit doing it. That's probably how they lost 22 minutes off of their schedule. Was just trying to get all these old farts off the train, take their pictures, let everybody set up, get the photographs, and get back on the car. They lost 22 minutes off their schedule.
I think they're young farts still. This isn't the old man territory yet. This is the old men that they will become.
Did you see the men in that photograph? I don't care how young they say they are. They're all old farts. Yeah, you're just born into this era as an old fart.
I've been on photo charters. You can't lead those people to fun at gunpoint. It's not prototypical. Oh, it's not this. Oh, it's not that. It's like, motherfucker. Oh no, not again. What the fuck? Can you hear me?
Hey, wait. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just got the equipment disconnect noise.
Oh, that's on you.
I don't know what it was. I don't know what it is. I was scared it was the microphone.
Nope. No, I'm just gonna bitch. I'm just here bitching about form. It's like, oh, this isn't prototypical. This isn't that. This isn't that. It's like, motherfucker, you are shooting on a digital camera. You don't get to complain that it's not prototypical to 1960 racism. I've done this. I've told people on photo chargers. I've told people on photo charters that they can only complain if they're shooting on film. And one guy pulled out a medium format camera, and I told him to his face, "You can complain."
There we go.
Nobody else.
He's in it. He's in it for the love of the game, right there.
So yeah. Those fucking foamers.
So George Walter was supposed to be the motorman for that entire trip, but Jay kept taking over and saying, "No, let me get this. I've got it. Just trust me. I've got this."
Who pays
and
your salary?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that I'm sure that was a part of it. Do you want a job tomorrow? Because if you do, you better let me run. I'm the fucking president of Speedrail.
This is like that. Oh no, I'll tell you about it in a minute. Just keep going.
So this trip continued with unscheduled photo stops and ending up 22 minutes behind schedule when they came up to a siding right before a single track section that was it was called the Oklahoma Avenue siding. Because there are extra trains out on the line, extra employees have been brought in to attend to the switches at these sidings to try to expedite movements. So instead of, say George was by himself on this car, instead of him having to get down and line a switch into a siding, get his train in there, and then go back and line the switch behind again, somebody would be there at the siding for him, line the switch, he'd pull into the siding, let a train come by, and then that same employee on the ground would go to the other end of the siding, line the switch for George to depart, and then line it back for the main behind him. A good idea. That was a genuinely good idea. Helps out a lot. Especially, it helps out a lot more if everybody's on the same page about the rules of the operation, though. Because when they rolled up to the Oklahoma Avenue siding, that switch was lined for George and Jay's train to go into the siding. And it was being attended to by a senior motorman and an instructor named John Haberling. So Maeder got off of the car and argued with Haberling that this train should not give right of way to whatever the hell else is coming down the line. Haberling believed correctly that based on the timetable, there was a southbound train that was approaching the single track section in front of them at any minute. But this couldn't be visually verified because the area was fairly densely wooded, and just past the signal, just past the Nachod Signal, which we'll come to, there was like a fairly tight 90-degree curve, and you couldn't see what was down the tracks. Maeder claimed that he had authority and priority from the dispatcher all the way north to Milwaukee. You know, forget this timetable. I am number one. He didn't call the dispatcher and verify this per his own rule.
Did he dream that up too?
He told Haberling that switch better be lined for the main track or else. Now, both these men are looking at each other, and neither one of them are paying attention to the Nachod Signal at the far end of the siding. The whole time they're arguing this, that signal is showing red. This was verified by firsthand accounts from George Walter and several members of the NMRA that were on the car.
Can you imagine being George Walter sitting in this thing going, I like, because he has to be like sitting there with the door open and being like, oh shit, oh fuck, and then just like, move that switch or you're fucking fired, as the Nachod Signal flashes from blank to white to red, and then as like the argument continues, switch clunk, switch is thrown, he's going like, oh no, he's gonna go, isn't he? And I don't even know.
I don't even know if they had time to process that. I'm pretty sure that Walter had been bullied all day and was just so tired. I don't think he said he saw the signal, but did not process what it meant. He apparently was dealing literally and figuratively with one of the worst headaches he'd ever had in his professional career.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. Then the NMRA. Could you imagine? Okay, forget George Walter. Oh, God. Imagine being the guy from the NMRA whose special interest is making the most accurate signals you can. You're sitting up front.
Oh, the guy that has a working Nachod signal system on his model railroad is probably sitting right behind the motorman.
Uh-huh. And he's just going like, huh, there's a car in the block. Move that switch or you're fired.
I wonder.
Oh no, there's a car in that block. Oh no.
I hope that signal's broken. You know, maybe it's showing red because the circuit's interrupted. Well, these guys, I mean, Jay runs a railroad. I guess he knows what he's doing.
Just sitting in the car, like in the car, it's just like, and then you know that Jay Maeder has to have gotten in this thing and done the equivalent of like when you're really mad and you get in the car and you punch it out of like the parking lot so fast that you let the tail slide out a little bit by accident. Like,
well, if a train could fishtail, Jay Maeder would have done that, because Haberling said that he, out of fear for his job, having just been threatened by Maeder, he acquiesced. He lined the switch for the main, and that train hauled ass out of there. And Haberling said he traced a line. He watched the car go past the siding and around the curve and looked up and saw the red signal. And that's when he began questioning, was that signal red before that car went around the corner or not? And he had approximately 15 seconds to ponder this when he said he heard two different train horns and then the most gut-wrenching, horrendous sound of steel on steel.
Yeah.
Let's go to that next slide.
Okay, how many clicks do I need to do? Just one?
Just one.
Oh, no.
This is what happened.
This is... Oh, there's our color photo of the lightweights.
Yeah, it's not the best. You can't really see the stripe on it, but you could see it got snazzed up for this.
So it's like they dressed the corpse before it died.
Pretty much. A southbound heavyweight train was proceeding per timetable and entered the single track section on a dark signal, which meant that it was unoccupied. And when he entered that signal, it flashed white, or when he entered that section, the signal flashed white briefly, as it should, and then turned red, saying that his car was registered and that the block was now protected for his movement southbound. And this is happening right before Heberling finally caved in, lined the switch, and Maeder took off and blew past a working stop signal. The exact speed at which these two cars met is unknown because these cars were not required to be equipped with speedometers, but they did not see each other for very long before they met. Somehow, Jay Maeder had enough time to react and see this coming, such that he took the coward's route and jumped before the cars hit.
Out. I thought that, like, what I read was that George Walters, because Walters survived, right? I thought that he had pushed Maeder. He had shoved Maeder. Well, Walters clearly survived because we were just talking about him a second ago. I thought that he had shoved Jay Maeder out of the way, and then Maeder went out the door, and then I think he either ducked or followed.
Well, to be quite frank, I think I would lend more credence to that story because the tale of Maeder jumping came from the inquest that happened after this, and that was Maeder's account. So of course he can't be rescued. He has to be the smart man and jump.
Oh, okay. I also am very interested in that both operators had the presence of mind to blare the horn like that was going to do fucking anything.
Well, it may have given Walter enough time to push his boss out of the way and possibly jump himself.
But
I mean, we know that Walter survived. I was wrong about that earlier. I don't know if he jumped, if he ran back in the car, or if he just got lucky where he was sitting.
I mean, if he got lucky where he was sitting, he ended up in the other car by that point, because look at the destruction. I think he had to have jumped as well, but
more than likely. I also don't know where he was standing after. Well, I guess it had to be kind of close to the front because he pushed Maeder out of the way. I'm going to give him, you know what? I'm just going to take that as the official narrative. We're going to give Walter the credit instead of Jay because I hate Jay Maeder.
He really
writing this whole episode stressed me out so fucking much because it's all so stupid.
He does not seem like the brightest of bulbs. There's just, and this is, while we're on this page right here, there is something else that I wanted to just mention really quickly, which is that there is a video taken from, so in the top right, in the top left photo, I'm sorry, you can see there's another interurban in the background. That is,
we'll get there.
I was going to say, that is another one of the NMRA specials. There was a guy.
It is.
There was a guy with his family in there. The kids had a camera and they were videoing it. And one of the other cars on this line, and this is corroborated by one of the people who died in this train, photographed the same car. One of the Shaker cars was out at the same time, running the scheduled services.
Yep.
So just to make this clear, Jay Maeder, in his mid-size lightweight, manages to hit the only thing on the line bigger than he is, thus potentially saving people from a more catastrophic collision where he kills an entire car full of people all at once, because the lightweight, as we saw a few slides ago, is big enough that it would have just gone through that shaker car like it was made of paper mache. Especially
or just thrown it straight down the hill.
I mean, both could be true. Like it just splits it in half, and then just both sides go down the embankment. But that would have been a far more disastrous accident.
The impact was reportedly loud enough that it could be heard for half a mile.
Oh my God.
Unfortunately, they were in a relatively rural area at the time. I mean, top right photo, you can see there's not much going on in that area. A resident who lived about 100 yards away was one of the first people to respond to the incident. He got close enough to see that something was terribly wrong, turned around, went back to his house, got a chain and tackle and hacksaws and brought them out and began trying to help extricate people after he called on his own phone for help from emergency services.
A passing cab driver saw it happen too, didn't he?
Yes.
Which that must have been a fucking thing to see, wouldn't it?
Speaking of community, this is a great example of the community coming together in a time of need, because like everybody who was not hurt was helping get people out of this incident. In the top left photo, that train you had mentioned sitting behind the accident, that other extra NMRA charter train, they had been running along. That I'm sure you watched the same video I did. They were running along and came across a man on the tracks, like waving them down. Supposedly, this was Jay Maeder saying that something about a terrible accident ahead. So they very cautiously, definitely not at line speed, just kept going down the line until they found this accident. And then damn near everybody on board this extra train that showed up immediately poured off the train and was trying to help extricate people, which probably makes up a large bit of the crowd that you see right here. And again, in the top left photo.
The video said that eventually the kid's dad came back looking very shaken. You have to remember that most of these guys in this photograph are probably having war flashbacks at this point.
Oh, like they're seeing stuff they haven't seen since they were in Europe
or Japan. Yeah. And
it was a bad accident.
Like that poor fucking cabbie. He saw this like I can't imagine being his dispatcher, because he called in for help. But could you imagine just seeing like 3/4 of that lightweight car just vanish like that?
It just gone. They did what's called telescoping. I can't remember. Were we talked in the Texas Electric Railway episode about the anti-climbers, correct?
Yes, we did. And
and these anti-climbers did fuck all because they were on different levels.
Yeah,
the lightweight had a very prototype, like a very basic anti-climber, but it was so much lower that they completely bypassed each other and telescoped into each other.
Yeah, the sill height on these cars was just so dramatically different that that's why you shouldn't run this like this. Like, it's like, that's why, like, in automobile safety, you kind of have to have every car at the same bumper height just for the crash structure to work like that.
Yeah.
This is
these cars were so
diametrically opposed.
Badly. Yeah, they were so badly paired up in this instant that in the bottom left photo, that's a newspaper photo. In the bottom center of that photo, you could see two little bright spots of light. Those are oxyacetylene torches that have been put in to cut the cars apart, or to cut chunks out of the cars to try to access the people who were still trapped inside.
Yeah,
what this resulted in was 10 people died as a result of this accident, and 45 more people were injured because Jay Maeder was an egotistical swine.
Yeah, including, shockingly enough, the motorman on the heavyweight, who
Yes,
basically took
Leroy acquits.
He took this straight through the head, basically, because he didn't duck in time, and the collision just plowed through the upper. Like, you can see basically how the steel frame of the car tanked the impact, but then immediately the window frames just gave out.
Yeah. He did suffer a massive head injury, and I couldn't figure out which account was true, but Leroy Quits either lost his leg or lost his foot because of this incident. It got pinned in. You can kind of see the front left of that car in the upper right image is caved in a little bit, and that was where he was resting. His left leg was kind of in that corner.
And yeah, and best of all, these are both NMRA specials. It should be noted that, like, every train in all four of these images is an NMRA special. So it's all the extra trains. The scheduled train with the locals on board was the shaker car, which would have been horrible in a different way. But this is all model railroads. This is all guys from, like, fuck knows where else, who have taken like 2 trains to get here, dying like so far away from home. And this is back.
All of these guys paid extra for the privilege of being traumatized in a way that probably won't ever be seen again.
Yeah, and you've got to remember, this is the 1950. A lot of these guys have just made, dying here. Their wife probably doesn't work. They might have kids, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So,
oh my God, your wife having a job is damn near scandalous in 1950.
So
a lot of these people were left high and dry, or a lot of these families were left high and dry because of this incident. There are several of the people who survived, but were injured so badly that they couldn't continue the jobs that they had left to go on this trip.
Yeah, and what are you going to do? Sue the destitute in Southwestern here? We don't believe in paying our bills?
No, a fun little detail was that third extra that showed up and brought more members of the NMRA was eventually used to try to pull the 2 collided trains apart, and it could not. These trains could not be pried apart until parts of it had been cut away, and a rather substantial tow truck from the Wisconsin National Guard was lended to them and used to physically pull the cars apart. And I feel particularly bad for Leroy Quits, the motorman on the heavyweight cars, because by all accounts, he had been operating per rule and per timetable. So I have a note here that says, I'm going to see if I can get him a t-shirt that says, I worked for Speedrail and all I got was this lousy peg leg.
Oh my God. I worked for Speedrail and all I got was this massive head injury and died.
Well, he didn't die from that.
I thought he did die.
I mean, he died eventually. Leroy Quits survived long enough to testify in court.
Oh shit!
I don't know what happened after that.
Maybe did George Walters die then? Did somebody who died? One of the motormen died, I thought.
Not that I could find. Leroy Quits was notably very hard to find any info on outside of this specific incident.
Yeah.
I believe I found an obituary that showed he died in the mid-60s.
Okay. That is another thing, listeners, that I'd like to point out. Finding accurate information on this was fucking difficult. That's why...
Yes, it was. It was insane. I spent the last week trying to find primary sources on this, and they don't exist. No, it's a lot of hearsay and recollection.
Like, we've started making a list and there of things we want to cover, and there are several of them that I have suggested only because I have a physical copy of the accident report, because I don't have fucking anything else official.
Oh yeah. I mean, hell, the Texas Electric Railway episode, I had the incident report from the Interstate Commerce Commission sitting on my desk in front of me.
So,
But what? Oh, we kind of didn't give it an explanation for the bottom right photo. In an attempt to clear the line, after the last person was removed from the lightweight cars, they just rolled it off down the side of the hill.
yeah.
That's all they did. The heavyweight car was eventually moved. Operations did not continue on the Hills Corners line for the rest of the day, but under cover of night, the heavyweight car was towed back to the shops and later towed under the cover of night again to a gravel pit or quarry where it was cut up and scrapped.
The Waukesha gravel pit is apparently where like every single piece of rapid transit equipment in the Milwaukee area was cut up, because there are photos of,
you just
of
throw it in
buses there.
You just throw it in this pit and all of a sudden, like, magical scrap elves come out and cut it up for you.
I guess they must have had a contractor there or something. But also, fun fact,
or that's just a convenient place.
Yeah, and then fun fact about the lightweight car getting rolled down the hill. Apparently, is the receiver part of the throttle on this car, like the control stand or something? Is that a word that makes sense to you?
Receiver, I don't. I could figure. What's the context for it?
So there's a story on one of the websites, I think it was the Trolley Dodger, where a guy went to the crash site after Speedrail had been all wrapped up and everything, and found in amongst the wreckage that was still left on the ground here, the receiver for which I think might be like the throttle handle. It was big and made of brass. And he was going
either that or the slide or the wheel that was on the end of the trolley pole that touched the wire.
Maybe. But in any event, he wanted to take it as a piece of memorabilia, but was afraid that he would get caught because he was riding the bus back, the bus which was the replacement for the rapid transit, and so he was afraid they'd know what it was. So he stashed it under a log, and when he came back for it, eventually it was gone. So the magical scrap elves took it. But
well, after did you see the photo from? Did you see the photo from this area after Speedrail was no more and the rails had already been torn up, of a guy just standing out there with a door from the lightweight car that was still out there a couple of years later?
Yeah, I saw that one.
I couldn't figure out how to work that in here, but I really liked that. They just left it.
Yeah.
So what happened next? Let's go on to that next slide. Okay. On the left is Jay Maeder, who is basically having the same reaction walking out of court as Urkel from Family Matters.
Okay. Is Urkel supposed to be there now?
Hit it again. Hit it again.
Yeah, I got it.
I thought those were tied together. My bad.
Nope. Stage
well, then go to the next slide.
Live stage direction.
Professionals. So obviously this was not good for Speedrail. Investigations begin immediately. Talks of criminal charges for Jay Maeder began within hours of the incident.
Which slide
and while all of this was going on.
Which slide am I supposed to be looking at next? Is it
17, the gravel pit that we just talked about?
Okay. Wow, that's so weird. Okay, hold on. I have the copy on my other screen, and it's not showing up there. That's so fucking weird.
Uh-oh.
Slide.
Next slide, we see do you see cars being scrapped?
Why were they being scrapped?
Well, because this killed Speedrail, Joe. Or it was a major contributing factor in killing Speedrail. And I say a major contributing factor because 3 days after this incident that killed 10 and injured 45, Speedrail had another train collision. A crew that had been switching a freight customer using a Shaker Heights car as a freight motor They finished their work. They were ready to go back to the yard where they could clock out and go home. And they said, let's not worry about silly things such as asking for permission to get out on the main line. Just entered it gung ho and promptly collided with another occupied passenger train.
I can't believe
Luckily,
they're using shaker cars for freight, but also wasn't what? No, I got nothing else. Keep going.
Luckily, this was pretty late at night, so the passenger train only had a motorman and one passenger, both of which were only very mildly injured. But having two train-on-train collisions within 3 days of each other tends to attract attention from all the wrong people.
Wasn't this accident also in almost the same spot?
Within a couple 100 feet.
Oh my God.
So investigations had already begun into the collision on September 2nd. Jay Maeder was already being there's already talks of Jay Maeder being held criminally liable for the NMRA incident on September 2nd. And then when the collision on September 5th happened, now insurance is starting to raise their eyebrows. The insurer really did not like that they were holding a policy for a company that can't keep trains from running into each other. And they were also pretty upset by the fact that Jay Maeder was 6 months behind on his insurance premium payments.
I'm amazed they covered him that long.
Now, would you like to know why Maeder was 6 months behind?
Because he didn't want to pay his bill?
Correct. Do you know what he thought would be a better use for the money?
A bigger, shinier train?
Literally, yes.
Of fucking course. What did he buy? Did he try to buy an electroliner?
He bought more heavyweights to go in with his lightweights. He used the insurance. He used the money he was supposed to be paying his insurance to buy more trains because he thought they were cool.
Oh my God. I can't.
So
okay.
now we get into the investigation of the September 2nd incident. Maeder told the investigators that before entering the single track section, the Nachod Signal had been read, but that he saw a quote unquote flash of white just before passing it. That he's saying that he didn't have authority to enter, but he did anyway. But somehow he thought he understood the rules better than anybody else, and that somehow that little flash of white that he saw meant that it was okay for him to enter the line.
So what he's saying is that he's very dumb.
Yes. Maeder's train had been an extra, but the planning of the event did come up with a timetable for that train's travel along the Hales Corners lines. It just wasn't published like a regular timetable that would go out to the general public. So he told he still knew where he should be and when. He told the investigators that he did not comply with Tennyson's rule of calling dispatchers if his train was more than 5 minutes late, despite the fact that his train was 22 minutes behind schedule, because, this is a direct quote, "My train was an extra train. Extra trains cannot be late. They can only be behind schedule."
That is not in accordance with reality.
I don't even know what the hell that means.
So
I read this so many times trying to figure out how he was twisting this, but every way I look at it, it's just dumb.
What I think he's trying to say is much in the same vein of the Queen is never late, everyone else is just early. Of that,
it has to be.
I'm special because I own this place, so I'm just behind schedule. I'm not late. Maybe late and behind schedule had like a distinct meaning in like the company rule book that he didn't read. But
late is relative, and what is it relative to? This schedule. So if you are late, you are behind schedule. If you are behind schedule, you are late.
But what if you're also the owner of the company? Then you are on fucking time if the train gets there at all.
That had to be how he looked at it somehow.
Is pointing towards
this is narcissistic logic.
It's you keep thinking it's narcissism. Do you know what this actually is? This is ineptitude. Jay Maeder thinks that he knows how to run a railroad, presumably because he read enough model railroader or something to think that he can do prototypical ops. And when things don't go his way, he's emotionally stunted enough that he gets upset about it and then takes it out on other people. So this isn't so much that he's like, I'm perfect, everything else can't be. It's like, I don't understand. I own this railway. How can things not be going exactly as I want them to? I'm the one who set it up.
Oh my God.
We're not dealing with narcissism. We're dealing with a lack of emotional intelligence. Because he clearly thought that he knew how to run a railroad. And when it's not, he's just getting mad about it.
I guess that would also kind of explain this next quote I have from him, which he said, he told the district attorney in all earnest that he and motorman George Walter were looking at the signals, but they were a help, but we weren't relying on them.
Which is exactly what you would do if your previous exposure to railroading was a God's eye view of your entire table.
Oh, you're right. You could see if your model signal was malfunctioning by just turning your head a little bit to the left or right and looking down the track, and there's not actually something in there. I've got a short somewhere in here. I'll fix it later and just keep running trains for now.
Or it's just like, I don't think about the signal. Because I don't think that I think the other thing is that he wasn't operating the train often. Like, this is very clearly somebody who's not in day-to-day ops. And so he's just like, I almost think that this is kind of like he's expecting the signal to turn green in front of him. That may be something else that we need to consider, is that the Nachod signal, by having a 3-color signal where it's off red and white, I think that you can intellectually know that, but when you're in, but 99% of the other signals that you would encounter in your life are, assuming that you're not some freak who likes the PRR's like position lights, are going to be a standard red, yellow, green, which means that he's instinctively thinking of that, and it's all coming together in his head that he hasn't internalized that what a Nachod signal does. And so he's like, it's not a control system, something, and maybe he thought that like the industrial spur down the road was different, but he just went through it without thinking about it. He literally did the thing of getting so mad that you back out of the garage without putting up the door first. He drove angry. Don't drive angry. He got mildly inconvenienced by his own vanity, was told no, shouted at an employee to do it anyways, and then as soon as he set off, he didn't look where he was going and he crashed into something. This is not... It's the ultimate small business tyrant tragedy.
Well, he wasn't a small business tyrant for long, because despite the fact that he owned all of the stock of Speedrail, he got fired from his own company.
As only one should be. One could only imagine.
And Speedrail was in such bad shape after this incident that even after shedding the dead weight that was Jay Maeder, and trying to clean up the image by not referring to it as Speedrail anymore. They went into bankruptcy and receivership, but nobody bought it. And Speedrail died on June 30th of 1951. I'm shocked that they made it almost an entire year past this, but the advent of the automobile, the reputation, and just the general lack of professionalism that hung as a dark cloud over the entire line doomed it to failure.
Imagine being so
Maeder.
bad at your job that you take a functioning railroad and within 18 months have it entirely shut down.
Yeah. It was functional. It wasn't necessarily profitable, but it was functional.
And then of
Maeder
course, he went where all the way back to Avon with 2 trolleys.
Yeah. He packed up his ball and left.
He took a Bernie and
So,
I don't know what the other one was, but
I can't remember
I don't even know
either.
where the
but
fuck he got a Bernie from in all of this. But
they had, I can't remember where he got it, but they acquired it and it was never actually operated on Speedrail, at least out on the main anywhere, because everybody said that it was a bad idea to run it was already a bad idea to run the heavyweights and the lightweights together. It was a bad idea to run even their lightweights and a tiny little single truck Bernie car together. And it was absolutely not suited for the service they needed. It couldn't keep the speeds necessary because Bernies are painfully slow.
Yeah, but anyways, he took one of them. He took the Bernie and one other car, went back home to Avon. Supposedly one of the cars survives. The Bernie might be the one that's vanished into the wind, but the I think it's at ORM, Ohio Railway Museum. I could be wrong. But
you got to ask, because I saw a photo of a relatively-ish recent photo of allegedly the Bernie in question, the Bernie car in question.
Maybe it's the other way around.
Showed that it was just absolutely riddled with cancer.
That sounds...
AKA rust.
That sounds right.
So, Maeder was officially charged with 4th-degree manslaughter, but for some reason he had all the charges dismissed. So he walked away from this, took his 2 cars and fucked off down to Florida, and he lived a full life and lived until I believe he was 67 years old. He died in 1975. And the only thing I could hope is that he was continuously haunted by the spirits of the people he killed because he had to be a Billy badass.
I guarantee you he was not. I said
I hope. I know it's not true.
Although then again, considering that he saw this all in his dream, maybe. What did he die of?
An unknown type of cancer. It just said cancer.
Okay, so he smoked like a chimney. Okay.
Oh, we saw in, what was that, slide 13? He had a cigarette in his hands.
So Jay Maeder smoked like it was his job. Okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to go on to the next thing? What's the next thing? Is that...
Well, the last little bit I have is this photo. We can see up at the very top, Milwaukee Electric Railway and Transport Company scrapping operation at the gravel pit, Waukesha, Wisconsin, April 1948. Obviously, a couple of years before this incident happened, but this is the exact same fate as everything else Speedliner or Speedrail, except for the 2 cars that he took with him to Avon. They all ended up here in this mysterious streetcar eating gravel pit.
And trolley buses ended up there too, I think.
Yes. Now, if any of you have been listening to this and said that the name Jay Maeder sounds familiar, it's because you probably know the better Jay Maeder, which, Joe, if you'll hit the space bar. The Jay Maeder we were speaking about was Jay Maeder Sr. His son, Jay Maeder Jr., was by all accounts a much better person and was the last artist. He was a writer and the last writer for the Little Orphan Annie comics from 2000 to 2010. He had a very successful career in journalism and actually passed away relatively recently. I want to say it was 2022.
Oh, wow.
But that's if Jay Maeder has sounded familiar this entire time, this is why. So if you really like this comic and you thought you liked the writer Jay Maeder, it's okay. You can still like him. His dad was the asshole.
I wonder if any Annie comics featured streetcars in them.
I did see one.
Oh
I did see one, but the image was so small that I couldn't use it.
my god.
I couldn't even read what they were talking about. It looked uneventful, like he wasn't referencing a crash or anything.
Little Orphan Annie, how did you become a little orphan? Well, my father died in a trolley crash in Milwaukee.
Oof. Oof. So next slide. What did we learn from this?
Nothing. Do I hit a second? Do I learn to hit the button again, or do I need to make the text show up yet?
Should see text on the left.
There we go. Okay. Rules. So we learned things we should have learned already, is what I'm hearing.
Which should have been well known by this point. I think the fourth bullet point, just because you're the foamer with the most money, you're not the smartest foamer, is the newest lesson. The fifth one, information gladly given, but safety requires avoiding unnecessary conversation, comes directly from plaques that were and still are posted in public transit vehicles in San Francisco. And it basically means if you're operating a rail vehicle or a bus, you need to be focusing on that and not focusing on a conversation with the passenger, which Jay Maeder was allegedly doing the entire time that he was at controls. Maybe if he hadn't been, he would have seen a red Nachod signal glaring in his face the entire time. But I don't know. Rules aren't suggestion, signals aren't suggestions, and rules should not be changed without due process. We saw Ed Tennyson set up a system to handle all of these extra trains and keep things safe and smooth. That was then literally ripped off the wall by Jay Maeder and replaced with his own special rules that were better because he was Jay Maeder and he knew how to run a railroad, damn it.
And he owned the place. I guarantee you that every single time he's like, I fucking pay these people. But like that sort of thing. Like, it's just like, it's my fucking thing.
Which ties into the last bullet point. Don't be afraid to say no to your boss, which I sort of get it. The relationship between an employee and a boss is strained today. It was even worse back then. Anybody that stepped in the way of Jay Maeder doing what he wanted was threatened with their job. And as hard as it can be, at a certain point, you have to have some professional integrity and say, no, that's not safe. And, I should have told you to hit the next button already to bring up the text on the right. But here's the counterpoints to all of these. Like I mentioned, rules are written in blood. I've said that before. Signals are there to make operating safer. Shouldn't have the authority to override guidelines and bulletins put out by the personnel whose job it is to do such things. I think the biggest one for me is having enough money to buy an interurban system doesn't mean you're smart enough to buy an interurban system. And Maeder didn't get that, and he was praised by a lot of the NMRA members that fed into his ego because they didn't understand this either. And that's why he felt like he had to put on a show for them and show that he was the big boss.
This is such a specific lesson. Having enough money to buy an interurban system doesn't mean you're smart enough to buy one. I wonder if that's ever applied to another human being in existence.
If you expand it to railroad, instead of just an interurban system?
Interurbans. I just want to think about interurbans. To anybody else in human history, I think that maybe Jay Maeder fucked up that badly.
That may be the case. But if you want to talk about railroads in general, we can look at the much more recent example of Ed Ellis. He didn't really have safety issues, but he sure did not know how to run the Iowa Pacific Railroad.
You mean the IOU Pacific?
Exactly.
someday I'd like to talk about the Iowa Pacific, but the problem is that nobody will tell me what is going on. They just make references like I know it.
I only know bits and pieces. I ain't not nearly enough to connect anything
Like,
about it.
all I've ever gotten is that his eyes were too big for his stomach, and he just got
Yes.
a lot of things, then the money ran out. I would love to hear, like, an informal history of that, but no one's ever... I've asked people, and I've gotten, like, some information, but not all of it. So...
I met him, and I wish I could have asked some more about it when I did, to see if I could find any holes in what story he told me.
Oh my
But
God.
just because you have the money doesn't mean you should do it. They were so worried about whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think about whether or not they should. And that's all I've got for this. The
Mate Heberling should have
Speedrail
said
was
no.
fucked up. He should have. He should have. I understand why he didn't.
Yeah.
It's I'm not I don't want to make an antagonist out of John Heberling, but in all earnest, he should have said no. The empathetic side of me completely gets why he should. He's probably got a wife and kids to take care of.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and then is there another slide after this, or are we at the end?
I think that's it. I'll sacrifice my video to check. Yeah, that was it. Nothing happened. I got a black screen.
Yep. So that's the episode. That is only taking us, let's just see how long this takes. That is 3 hours, 1 minute. Perfect runtime, as per usual.
2 hours 51 once we cut out the 10 minutes of shit going just completely sideways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do cut things out. Maybe this time I won't use the thing I did in the Monorail episode, which is the North Korean TV test card. Did you see that when I uploaded it?
I did not, but I think you should. I'm all for that.
I might.
Well, thank you all so.
Thank you all
so much for listening.
Thank you all. I'm so glad you're listening to this.
I hope you're enjoying it as much as we are. I know we go on for a while. I know you have to be a certain type of nerd to be listening all the way to 3 hours and 2 minutes in, but we love you all. We appreciate you listening. All 12 or 15 of you that subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and I hope to expand this a little bit more. One of the things you could do to help us out is to send us in your safety stories from public transit. Did you work public transit and saw something unsafe? Were you a passenger and saw something that was obviously unsafe from your non-professional viewpoint? If you did, please send us an email at syddowtw@gmail.com and tell us about it. That email address will be in the show notes. You can take a look at that. Send us anything you want. We're looking for content. We want to hear about how some of these lessons have not been learned yet. Oh, yeah. And I'm looking forward to see what gets sent in.
Yeah, we want to... It can't just always be me. I have very few public transit anecdotes. I live in the middle of nowhere. I have the Lightspeed bus story, and that's about it at this stage.
I have many of them, but I kind of don't want to crowd out the entire thing with it. And also, they're not long enough to be an episode, but too long to be an end of the episode tale.
We just have to make the end of the episode longer then. Wah-ha-ha-ha-ha.
Oh, Joe. No. That 3 at the beginning of the time elapsed is concerning enough.
The Monorail episode is perilously close to 4 hours.
I was terrified by that.
I was
going slightly insane by the end of it.
You know what's really bad is I actually am just like, fine. I'm fine. This is just how I live my life.
You're used to being up this late.
It's It's 11 p.m. It's not even that late.
What time do you wake up, Joe?
9.
Okay.
8.
I'm
8.
usually out of bed at like 6:45 or 7.
Okay.
This is so late.
Okay. I work at
When I
9.
sleep in on the weekends, I get up at 8:30.
When I sleep in on the weekends, I get up at 4 p.m. So,
Jesus Christ. I'm going to bed, Joe.
right.
I hope you all have a good night. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye. I'm stopping the recording now.
Bye.